Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Welcome to the Infowars Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and I'm standing in for Alex Jones. He's going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour. We've got a lot of breaking news. I'm sure you're hearing it. Even the mainstream media is covering the fact that the government is spying on everyone, looking at all of our phone records. You know, there's an old ad from one of the phone companies said, "Can you hear me now?" Well, I guess the question is, can you hear the tyranny now? We've been talking about this for a long time, and I can hear it in the background, can't you? It's getting louder and louder. And for those of us who've been watching this for very long, it is getting deafening, and we're getting sick of this. This is something that isn't new. This is something that is newly getting the attention of the mainstream media. They haven't been paying attention, and most of the public hasn't been paying attention. You know, this breaking story from The Guardian, and here's some of the headlines. Let me just read you. This is, The Guardian says, NSA is collecting phone records of millions of Verizon customers daily. Now, this is a classified document that Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian leaked out, and kudos to him and kudos to the whistleblower who put this out. People need to see this stuff. Here's some more. Even the New York Times is covering this. How about that? U.S. is secretly collecting records of Verizon calls. Who would imagine that? The New York Times would tell us that. We've also got AP saying the government's scooping up Verizon phone records. Obama administration defends phone record collection. This is coming from the Business and Financial News. We've got Forbes. NSA Verizon spying order specifically targeted Americans and not foreigners. Now, see, that's the point here. Ron Paul pointed this out, and we've pointed this out. The FISA Act is a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Now, if you allow your government to act like criminals abroad, they're going to act like criminals domestically. They're going to be even more likely to act like criminals domestically because this is their turf. You know, they're basically a large gang, and when you allow them to kill people like this drone list kill, they're going to kill people in the U.S. in the same way. It's just a matter of time. And we've already got the FBI picking up witnesses to the or people who are just connected to the patsies that they're using for this bombing and killing them, shooting them 6 times, plus one in the back of the head for good measure. We've got the CBS talking about the Department of Homeland Security now says laptops and phones can be searched based on hunches. Oh, I've got a hunch. I don't have reasonable cause. I don't have a search warrant. I don't have constitutional authority. I've got a hunch. Let me have access to all your private papers, your personal effects. We've got WorldNet Daily, WND, says now the FBI wants to backdoor all software. Certainly we can trust those guys, right? You know, they're trustworthy. We can give them access to everybody's information. From Business Insider, the same federal judge who struck down Obamacare approved the government's sweeping collection of phone records. You know, we'll talk about that a little bit. Of course, Ron Paul warned us about this back in September. This is what he said, September the 12th, 2012. Now, this is before Ron Paul retired. This is at the very end of his congressional career. He said, Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to reauthorization of the 2008 FISA Amendments Act as it violates the Fourth Amendment of our Constitution. Supporters of this reauthorization claim the U.S. will be more vulnerable if the government is not allowed to monitor citizens without a warrant. I would argue, this is Ron Paul saying this, that we are more vulnerable if we do allow the government to monitor Americans without a warrant. Nothing makes us more vulnerable than allowing the Constitution to be violated. That's right, because then what we do is we turn the government into criminals. We turn the government into terrorists. You are 8 times more likely to be shot by a police officer than to be killed by a terrorist. That's the government's own figures. So we're going to be looking at that, and we've got a lot of information about Bilderberg, and Alex is going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Yeah, look around you. All you see are sympathetic eyes. When I look around me, all I see are government surveillance cameras. And I know that they're just trying to help me help myself, right? They're just to provide security for you. They want to make you safe. Well, who protects us from our protectors? Who watches the watchers? And they're totally out of control. As we've been talking about the release of the court order, that it was a classified document, and it is leaked out now through The Guardian that all of Verizon customers are being turned over to the FBI and to the NSA to basically look at who you're calling, when you called, that sort of thing. And it is specifically targeted at Americans, not foreigners, as if that really made a difference. They've used this before to say that, well, if an American is calling abroad, we're now going to listen to that American's call as well. And if you look at the information of what they're doing here, this is exactly the same information that they collected on the AP. And we said at the time that this was when they came out and told the AP that they were looking at who they were calling and the time of date and that sort of thing. We said at the time, they're doing that all the time. They're not just doing that. They're also recording their messages, their entire messages. That's the whole point of the Utah data center. That's something that's coming online later this year. And this is something that we really need to think about. Just to put this in perspective, they're going to have yottabytes worth of data at the Utah data center. Now, what is a yottabyte? It's 1 trillion terabytes. So it's 1 trillion. It's astronomical. Think about this, just to put this in perspective. You've got a $80 2 terabyte drive that you can get right now called a MyBook. It's about 2 inches wide. Okay, I've worked out these figures here. Now, how many of these things would you have? They have multiple yottabytes. We don't know how many yottabytes, so let's just say 2 yottabytes. They've only going to have 2 yottabytes at the Utah data center. So how many of these 2 terabyte drives that you can get now called MyBook, how many of those would you have to stack side by side to have 2 terabytes? Put this in perspective. Well, this MyBook is pretty small. It's only about 2 inches wide. If you were to stack these things to have 1 trillion of them, you would have 167 billion feet or 31.5 million miles of these drives stacked. That's 2 yottabytes. That's only 2 of the many yottabytes that they're going to have at the Utah data center. So you'd have 31,500 miles of these MyBook drives stacked. How far is that? Well, the distance to the moon is only 238,000 miles. This is 31.5 million miles. If you want to go to Mars, that's 48 million miles. So it's kind of like that. To give you an idea of how long it would take to travel to Mars, okay, if you're traveling by car at 70 miles an hour to Mars, assuming you could, 228 years. Or if you're traveling by jet, 747 speed, it'd be 32 years. Or if you're going by a spaceship at 25,000 miles per hour, it would still take you 8.5 months to get to Mars. That's the distance that you would be stacking these MyBook drives if you had just the minimum amount of data that they're going to have at the Utah data center. Now, of course, they've got some technology that we don't have that's going to have that data at a much denser storage area. But the point is, this is an truly astronomical amount of data that's being stored at the Utah data center. Why do they need that kind of data storage? Because they are collecting every bit of electronic communication from every person on Earth for future data mining. Now, they don't have the capability to do all the data mining that they want now, but believe me, they will. What you're looking at is something kind of like the Terminator, where they're going to, sometime in the future, they're going to go into your past and they're going to find information about you to incriminate you. You know, you don't have anything to worry about, do you? Well, what if you don't agree with the government's political views? What if your religion becomes outlawed? What if they want to blackmail you into doing something? Well, they are going to have the data. They're going to have your entire past set up at the Utah data center. And the question is, now that we know about this, we don't just need another church committee hearing. If you remember back in the 70s, Frank Church had a oversight committee that exposed a lot of the criminal actions of the CIA and a few other actions of people that had come to this country under Operation Paperclip and were involved in some really shady biological, chemical, drug types of things for the CIA and for the government. That's where you had the CIA director, Colby, hold up his heart attack gun, talking about assassinations, that sort of thing. There were some little bit of reforms that came out of that, but not much. Not much. And once George Bush got back into place in the CIA, it was business as usual. We need to see some real reforms. We need to see some politicians step up, like maybe Rand Paul or Ted Cruz. We need to see the Utah data center be shut down. We need to see some civil liberties put back in. We need to see the Patriot Act revoked. And we need to see some of these people go to jail because their laws are unlawful. Their actions are unlawful. And even when they've got a law like FISA that asserts that they have the right to listen to people's phone calls abroad, and Americans, if they're calling abroad, even when they make that bold, unconstitutional assertion, they don't even stick to the limits and the parameters of these unconstitutional laws. They go far beyond that. Well, today is the beginning of Bilderberg. And before we get into that, I wanted to play one other thing. I almost forgot. We've got, we don't want to forget that this information that hopefully is going to wake people up. Again, it's nothing new, but we appreciate the fact that this has been made public. This document has been leaked. This secret court finding has been leaked. And that was done by a whistleblower. And I want you to think about that because right now, it's not only today is the, Chris Jordan just told me this is the 64th anniversary of 1984. And I think we can all hear the clocks striking 13. Something is very definitely wrong in America. And fortunately, we had a whistleblower release this information to the reporter at The Guardian. And we should think about Bradley Manning. And think about what he did. Think about the ordeal that he's gone through. Think about how he's been punished. And we've got a video here that we're going to cut into called I Am Bradley Manning. Guys, can
when you join the military, are you asked to keep any war crimes you might see secret?
You see something that's so wrong.
Light them all up.
202 traffic 260.
It's very hard for a lower level soldier to turn on his officers and say there was a war crime.
The whole concept of whistleblower laws are you cannot get into trouble for reporting about illegal or improper activity.
I think we have to be clear that the cables were not top secret documents.
It's an absurd charge to giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
If you saw incredible things,
awful things, things that belonged in the public domain,
and not on some servers
stored in a dark room in Washington, D.C.
What would you do?
What would you do?
What would you do?
What would you do?
I was Bradley Manning.
I am Bradley Manning.
I am Bradley Manning.
I am Bradley Manning.
I am
Bradley Manning.
Bradley Manning.
Bradley Manning.
Bradley Manning.
I hope that we are all
Bradley Manning.
And now what do we do about this?
If you know nothing about Bradley Manning, you should find out. And then you should help me bust him out of jail.
That's right. If you see something that's wrong and you're a government employee, you have an obligation to tell people about that. And fortunately, somebody did just that with this leak of this secretive court order. Now, of course, the Obama administration replies that a senior administration official did not specifically confirm the report, but noted that the published court order pertains only to data such as the telephone number or the length of the call and not the subscriber's identities or the content of the telephone calls. Yeah, that's under a different secret order. We know that's what they're going to be doing at the Utah data center. But the interesting thing is that this article then from Reuters goes in and tries to put a spin on it. And they say, well, this was issued 1 week after U.S. law enforcement officials tracked down 2 brothers suspected of carrying out the deadly Boston Marathon bombing. Come on. They don't have to get the phone records of every subscriber, millions of subscribers across the United States from Verizon, just because of the Boston bombing. Is that going to become the excuse for everything? Martial law across the country, spying on people like the East German Stasi state on steroids. We've got a Forbes article here that says NSA's Verizon spying order was specifically targeted Americans and not foreigners. This is what they say. The latest revelation of the extent of NSA's surveillance shows that it is focused specifically on Americans to the degree that its data collection has, in at least one major spying incident, explicitly excluded those outside of the United States. They pass a law that says that they can listen without warrants to people. And understand, too, that the Constitution says persons. It doesn't say citizens. We want to try to think that the government can act like criminals and mafia people to foreigners and in other countries, and it doesn't affect us. That simply isn't true. When you allow them to do that to anyone, you're setting up a precedent. And so now we have this FISA Act that was put in that, in my opinion, violates the letter and the spirit of the law, saying that government doesn't spy on persons, and now they're explicitly doing it to those in the United States and excluding foreigners in this particular case. CBS says, since his election, President Obama has taken an expansive view of legal authorities in the name of national security. Do you think? That's an understatement. But they do go on to say he's asserted that he can order the deaths of U.S. citizens abroad who are suspected of terrorism without involvement by courts, investigate reporters as criminals, and in this case, read and copy the contents of computers carried by U.S. travelers without a good reason to suspect wrongdoing. Well, we're going to come back and we're going to talk in the next segment about Bilderberg, because today it is starting in earnest. It's just been a prelude up to this point. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. I'm David Knight, standing in for Alex Jones. It's the Alex Jones Radio Show, and Alex is going to be joining us in just a few minutes at the bottom of the hour. He is in London, just north of London at Watford, UK, covering Bilderberg. And today it starts in earnest. He's been there for a couple of days, and it's been a prelude to things getting set up. There's a lot of preparations to be made, even though they've had Operation Discuss, as they call it, going on for 18 months. There were giant fences that had to be put around this massive compound, this luxury hotel. They've got kind of like turned it into a concentration camp with all the guards and everything. So they've been busy doing last-minute preparations like that, kicking journalists out of restaurants, canceling reservations, that sort of thing. Today, they're starting to arrive. And today, we've got, there you go, if you're watching that, you see some of the preparations. Alex was there when they were putting these massive concrete blocks out, and now they've turned if you've got a shot, I don't know if you've got a shot of that somewhere, they've essentially turned the place into a concentration camp. It looks like this beautiful luxury hotel out in the middle of England. And of course, they're enacting police state tactics against people who are just trying to go out and walk their dog. If you go to our Ustream live feed, and you can find everything at Infowars.com/B, as in Bilderberg, you'll see our reports, our live reports that they're putting up there from Bilderberg on Ustream. And yesterday, Leanne got some video of a guy who was walking his dogs, or at least trying to walk his dogs, and he said, "You mean I can't walk my dogs because they're having this meeting?" Yeah, but it's nothing really to worry about. There's also another video that you must see where the BBC came out and said they wanted to interview Alex, and she did everything she could to try to provoke him to a rant. And Alex does a great job of talking about, it's amazing. He's talking about how the media has for years, for decades, ignored this, downplayed this. Even when he had footage of it, they said it didn't exist. And then the lady is saying, "Oh, but it's just a conspiracy theory, isn't it?" It's amazing footage to see. Unfortunately, we can't hear her as well as we would like to, because Leanne was taking pictures of her, and she would not say anything. And she broke off Alex before the interview, looks directly at Leanne and says, "Who are you?" And said, "I'm not going to talk as long as you're recording." So she had to go away. But somebody got a recording of at least what Alex was saying and his reactions to what she was saying, so you can tell about that. Now, today they're showing up at Bilderberg, and here's a headline from The Guardian. Bilderberg 2013 delegates arrive in blacked-out cars for their secretive summit. Isn't it interesting that we've talked for most of this show about how our government is looking at everybody's phone conversations, everybody's records. They're micro-managing every bit of information about us, saving it to data mine, and yet we can't even look at our royalty who is attending Bilderberg. Just amazing, the double standard. Here's some of the headlines at Infowars. Bilderberg member is set to speak on the record. Participant of the secret confab is set to talk with the BBC. Well, I'm sure that's going to be a great stand-up article. It's probably going to be a move along. There's nothing to see here. We're just trying to keep the world spinning. And, of course, that has to be done by corporations meeting in secret with politicians. at the very same time that in the UK they've got a massive lobbying scandal. And it hasn't been that long since we've had lobbying scandals. Remember Jack Abramoff? Of course, there was nothing to see there. We just move along. I'm sure he was just playing golf with people. Also, massive police operation effect as the Bilderberg confab convenes. What we talked about earlier, residents experiencing a virtual police state. And listen to this. The would-be world's biggest oil merger is agreed at Bilderberg from Steve Watson. Shell and BP deal would be the biggest corporate deal ever. That's the kind of stuff. Of course, we can't know what's going on there, and it's not just deals that are going on between private companies. The same kind of deals are going on between the corporations who control these politicians and the politicians who are going to implement their plans for world governments. They're breaking everything down right now into trade zones. Europe is one of the key ones. The Euro and the European Union is one of the key trade zones. NAFTA is the other one. Once they can get those two in place, it's going to be very easy to break the entire world into 10 trade zones. Africa will be another one, so forth. Then just consolidate everything into one world government. And so what we have here at Bilderberg is world governance by a global elite who are agreeing to this agenda. We've seen leaked memos, and the BBC knows that these memos are out there. They've actually reported on them in the past. They've reported on the WikiLeaks documents exposing the Bilderberg memos. Also, the media is complicit in the Bilderberg cover-up. Yeah, you think? We're going to be talking about that right after the break, and Alex is going to be joining us in just a few minutes. So stay tuned. He's there with Leanne McAdoo and Paul and Steve Watson. And also, Richard Reeves is doing some camera work and staff stuff. So we're going to be talking to all of them in just a few minutes. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, standing in for Alex. He'll be joining us in a few minutes live from London, where he's covering the Bilderberg conference. Yes, we're going where the mainstream media is afraid to go, at least the mainstream media in the U.S. And we were talking earlier about this leak of court order from the secret court order that was kept under lock and key, classified, giving authorization to seize phone records of all of Verizon's customers. And Breitbart has an interesting take on this. He says the mainstream media has failed to break even one of the 4 Obama scandals. He says, well, if it's Thursday, there's got to be a new Obama scandal. But he says, okay, look at over the past 4 weeks, 4 major scandals have broken over the Obama administration. And it's a very sad and frightening truth that our pathetic American lapdog mainstream media is not responsible for breaking even a single one. That's Breitbart writing this. Verizon? Nope, that wasn't our guys. That was the Brits at The Guardian. The IRS? No, that wasn't our guys. The IRS broke their own scandal with a planted question. The Justice Department's seizure of AP phone records? No, that wasn't us. Believe it or not, the Associated Press didn't even break the story about the Associated Press being spied on by the U.S. government. Like the IRS, we only found out about it because the Justice Department outed itself. And then he says, Benghazi, are you kidding? With a couple of rare exceptions, Jake Tapper, Cheryl Atkinson, the media has spent the last 8 months attacking those who reported it. Congress and Fox News, instead of seeking the truth. That's welcome to the club. I mean, that's what's been happening at Infowars for years. Alex has been attacked by the very media that ignores the breaking stories. And you'll see that at Bilderberg, there are the owners of the mainstream media. The Washington Post is there, the owner, but you're not going to see Washington Post coverage of Bilderberg. You do see it, however, breaking in London. And the British newspapers, we've got a headline here from the London Evening Standard. It says, no minutes, no press conferences, just the world's power brokers chewing the fat on the issues of the day. It's the Bilderberg conference, and it's coming to a suburb near you. That's right. If you live in London, it's coming to your suburb, and it's going to be something that's going to be pretty awful. We've also got a headline here from Telegraph, another British paper, says Bilderberg Group, no conspiracy. Just the most influential group in the world. Conspiracy theorists, it's not a theory. They're there. We're taking pictures of them. They're shutting down an entire section of London here, and it's not a theory. Claim that it is a shadow world government. Former leading members tell The Telegraph it was the most useful meeting they ever went to, and it was crucial in forming the European Union. Oh, okay. So if it's crucial in forming the European Union, then is it a conspiracy theory that it's a shadow government? No. But today the Bilderberg Group is meeting in Britain, is what, that's the headlines from The Telegraph. Now, I've got a special report here from John Bound, but before we go to it, I want to talk about a couple of things that will help you and will help us to pay the bills for when we do things like cover Bilderberg in London with staff there. If you go to InfoWarsStore.com, you'll see there the Survival Seed Vault. Now, one of the things that's really key about this is the fact that these are heirloom seeds. Now, there's a big difference between selective breeding of seeds and GMO. And if you've been following the news from us and maybe even some other alternative outlets, you're going to hear about the Monsanto court cases. You're going to see that there's been foreign countries have been turning back our wheat supply. They're concerned about contamination of the food supply. Why? Because of GMO. GMO is very, very different from selective breeding. With GMO, they can mix in pesticide into the genetic makeup of this food. They can mix in animal parts into this food. They can do stuff trans-species. So it isn't just that they're refining it through selective breeding. That's what farmers have done for generations. And that's what you're getting with an heirloom seed. You're getting something that people have bred for taste, for health. Sometimes the grocery stores have bred their food for appearance. I remember going to Orlando and eating at a restaurant, and they brought out a salad that had heirloom tomatoes in it. It's the first time I had experience with that. They looked absolutely horrible. Some of the ugliest looking tomatoes I've ever seen and the best tomatoes I've ever tasted. That's what you get with heirloom seeds. You get that, and you get stuff that's not contaminated with GMO. And that's a concern because even though our Supreme Court unanimously said that Monsanto can do anything they want to in our country, of course they're barred in other countries, even though they can do anything they want to in this country, one of the things that we've got to worry about, which is what we just saw with wheat, is contamination, cross-pollination. These seeds are sealed in packets, and they are kept as heirloom seeds, so it's something you don't have to worry about. This is genetically clean food. So take a look at that at InfoWarsStore.com. Also, we have a ProPure gravity filter special, 15% off through Bilderberg. That's something that we've got a new technology filter that ProPure has come out with, a single filter that can remove hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is the most common way that our water supply is polluted with fluoride. They can get that out with that gravity feed filter. And unlike reverse osmosis or distillation, ProPure filters do not eliminate the beneficial minerals that are naturally found in water. So check out those two. You're going to get 15% off of ProPure filters through Bilderberg. So a special going on right there that'll help us to pay for the trip to Bilderberg. There's a lot of expenses involved in covering the news, and we don't get massive subsidies from the federal government like MSNBC and others do. Well, let's go to that report now from John Bound. It's how Bilderberg grew to prominence.
Welcome to Bilderberg Exposed, Evolution by Stealth.
Tonight, we will examine the influence of the Council of Foreign Relations on the Bilderberg Group and document the objectives of the masters of world domination.
In order to fundamentally understand Bilderberg, we must look at the origin and influence of the CFR. The Council on Foreign Relations was founded after World War I, when Woodrow Wilson tasked his advisor Edward House to create a fellowship of 150 scholars to formulate a new foreign policy strategy. From the very beginning, the CFR was committed to a one-world government based on a centralized global financial system. A global Congress would need to be assembled, so by invitation only, leaders of the world in industry, politics, media, and royalty were brought in to discuss in extreme secrecy planning related to global domination by the selected elite. The objectives of the Bilderberg Group include one set of universal values, control of world public opinion by mind control,
An end to the middle class, only rulers and servants, a zero-growth society, order out of chaos and perpetual wars, total control of education to program the public mind as a servant class, centralized control of all foreign and domestic policies, impose a UN tax on world citizens, expanding NAFTA and the World Trade Organization globally, and expansion of NATO as a world military. In the 1960s, the attendees included Prince Philip, Paul-Henri Spaak, former Secretary General of NATO, former Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, former Secretary of the new Department of Economic Affairs, Eric Roll, former President Gerald Ford, former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, former U.S. Secretary of State Christian Herter, and Special Assistant to the President Charles Douglas Jackson. The final names are especially important, as they boldly violated the Logan Act, a U.S. federal law that forbids unauthorized citizens from negotiating with foreign governments. Violation of the Logan Act is a felony, punishable under federal law with imprisonment of up to 3 years. For more information regarding Bilderberg, please visit InfoWarsStore.com and pick up Daniel Estulin's excellent work, The Octopus Deception. Please join us tomorrow when we examine how the Bilderberg Group manufactured the United States presidents in the 1970s and how these commanders-in-chief conspired with foreign entities illegally to forward the goals of a new world order as the elitist Bilderberg agenda evolves by stealth. This is John Bound with the Infowars Nightly News.
A great report from John Bound. Now, we've got a background. Listen to how you just heard how John Bound described it. He talks about the Logan Act, talks about how that's illegal, talks about pandering of influence. Now, this is the way mainstream media, even in Britain, of course, they're covering it for the first time there. It's kind of hard for them to ignore it in London. It's having a pretty big impact there. So the Telegraph is covering it, but they're doing what we probably expect the BBC is going to do, and that is basically explain it away, move along, there's nothing to see here. Here's how they give the history of Bilderberg. They say Bilderberg was founded in 1954 to bring the leaders of Western Europe and the United States closer as the Soviet Union cemented its control of the Eastern Bloc. See, that was, it's all about defense. We've already heard other people say it was to bring us peace. Well, we've had nothing but 60 years of war since the end of World War II. We've had continuous warfare. It's been to nobody's benefit except the military-industrial complex, which is very, very well represented at Bilderberg. If you look at it, most of the attendees fall into either banks, politicians, industrial military complex, and big oil companies. That's what you see at Bilderberg by and large. And, of course, mainstream media owners, not reporters, are there. They continue on in the Telegraph. They say they first met at Bilderberg Hotel, that's where they get the name, near Arnhem, at the instigation of Joseph Rettinger, a Polish polio victim who had fought the Nazis during the war. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands was the chair. In that first meeting, oh, wait a minute. They didn't mention the fact that Prince Bernhard didn't fight the Nazis. Prince Bernhard was a Nazi. He was also involved in Lockheed Martin scandals of the 1970s. Influence peddling. You wouldn't expect that that would happen when a lot of people get together in secret at Bilderberg with politicians. A lot of big, powerful, the most powerful companies in the world get together with the most powerful politicians in the world. You wouldn't expect there to be any corruption there, would you? Come on, really, seriously. In that first meeting, the participants included bankers, economists, and the future labor leader Hugh Gaitskell. And they debated the communist threat and the prospect of European integration. They didn't just debate the prospect of European integration. They planned it. They coordinated it. They conspired. You know where that word comes from, conspire? It's interesting. It's breathe together. Breathe together. That's what these guys were doing. They were breathing together to create the Euro and the European Union. How's that working out? What we see there is we see Goldman Sachs executives put in charge of companies, imposing spending limits on them, telling them how to run their country, whether you agree with it or not, telling them how to run their country and deposing democratically elected leaders. Now, it goes on, and I want to read this here. But while this is the Telegraph, while they rankle at the conspiracy theorists, former leaders of the Bilderberg conferences say they were the most important events they ever went to. Okay, so how can you say, move along, there's nothing to see here, we're just getting together, and yet you say they are the most important events we ever went to, and yet we're not allowed to see any minutes or any notes. We're not even allowed to know who goes there, because although they have now in the last couple of years released an official attendee list, and this year, for the first time, I believe, they listed an agenda. We don't know if that's the agenda that they're talking about, and we don't know if there are other people at that meeting. That was what Alex was talking about. That's why why do you think they're blacking out the cars? I mean, if they've told us that Henry Kissinger is going to be there, does Henry Kissinger really need to come into a black limo? Only if they're sneaking people in the back door. And we've been told in the past that we had presidential candidates that were brought in the back. They were being groomed for leadership positions. And they finish up and they say this: it is above all a club for life's winners. For life's winners. George Osborne, Ed Balls, and Ken Clark, the cabinet minister, who also serves on the group's steering committee, will arrive this afternoon. Well, life's winners. George Osborne and Ed Balls are the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. This would be like the Treasury Department showing up and the opposition party's Chancellor, Treasury Department. This is all in the midst of a major scandal that's going on. We had in the last week, just at the end of last week, we had 3 members of the House of Lords have to step down because of a sting that was done by a newspaper there, showing them agreeing to take bribes to peddle influence. We have a 4th person who, just prior to that, was also involved in a journalism sting. So UK is in the midst of a massive corruption of influence scandal, and yet the Telegraph says this is just for life's winners. This is a club for life's winners. Don't worry about this. They're just having a good time. They're just playing golf. Maybe if we could get in there, we would really see that you got Henry Kissinger dancing disco with David Petraeus. Maybe, I don't know what's going on, but I'm sure it's nothing that we need to worry about. It's just one of the most important meetings that these world leaders say they've ever attended. But at the same time, we shouldn't really be bothering them because, after all, they're entitled to their privacy, even though you and I aren't, even though they want to know every detail and facet of our life, measure us, track us, spy on us, record us. We're not even allowed to know who's in that building. Well, in other news, Lindsey Graham isn't sure if bloggers deserve First Amendment protection or not. I'm not sure if Lindsey Graham deserves to be a senator or not. I think what we ought to do is, I think the alternative media, I think bloggers need to get busy and make Lindsey Graham their pet project. I think they need to make sure that this guy does not get back to the Senate. He's coming up for a re-election this next time. And if there's any senator who has been on the wrong side of every issue, it's Lindsey Graham. Always on the side of war, always on the side of spying on citizens, always on the side of taking people's constitutionally guaranteed rights. And you know, those rights aren't our rights just because the Constitution says them. It says that they are. There are rights because we're human beings. Those rights come to us from God as human beings. They're basic fundamental rights that all human beings, whether they're American citizens or not, enjoy. That's why when you allow the government to trample the rights of foreigners in other countries, it's just a matter of time before they trample your rights in this country. Because if they can disrespect other people, have no respect for people as human beings in other countries, they're not going to have any respect for you as a human being in this country either. And we're seeing that happening now in spades. We need to make sure that people like Lindsey Graham don't return. We need to get more senators like Ted Cruz, like Rand Paul, and then and only then are we going to be able to do some things like shut down this Utah data center and send some people to jail. It's about time. Hang on, we'll be right back after the break. Alex Jones is going to be joining us very quickly. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight standing in for Alex. And if you're watching the broadcast there, you see that we've got some live Ustream that is coming in right now from Bilderberg. Alex is there with other staff and crew, and they'll be joining us shortly. We'll have some live update reports from that. We were talking just before the break about Lindsey Graham, and I wanted to say that it's not just... let's talk about what he says about bloggers and whether or not they deserve First Amendment protection. He said, who is a journalist is the question that we need to ask ourselves. This is Lindsey Graham. He says, is any blogger out there saying anything? Are they saying anything? Do they deserve First Amendment protection? These are the issues of our times. Yeah, they are the issues of our times. They're the issue of our fundamental rights as guaranteed in the Constitution. The same Constitution Lindsey Graham swore to uphold and defend that he now tries to destroy at every turn. And of course, in this picture from the National Journal, guess who is right there by his side, blurred out in the background? It's John McCain. Yep, John McCain, the other person who is always on the side of war and espionage against Americans. And let's understand, too, that there is a war going on against Americans. The war of the war of terror is a war of terror on American citizens, just like the war on drugs is actually a war of drugs conducted on American citizens, imprisoning us at a rate that is higher than any other country. We have more prisoners, people in prison from the war on drugs primarily, than even China does. And China has a far larger population and has authoritarian communist leaders. But we have a war of drugs because it's not just throwing people in jail at an alarming rate. It's also the fact that we went into Afghanistan and the Taliban had reduced the drug production there for poppy-based drugs like heroin and cocaine. They had reduced that to 10% of the world's supply. It had been one of the leading areas of the supply of drugs, and that's one of the reasons we had to get the Taliban out of there, because we needed to get that drug flow going again. That's one of the major ways the CIA funds itself is with illegal drugs. So we had Petraeus go in there, and they, after American presence there, after we threw the Taliban out, we went from 10% to 90% of the world's supply coming from Afghanistan. It looks like we've got some more footage there that's streaming live. Do we have Alex and crew there coming in live, guys? Okay, we don't have any audio yet, but it looks like they're panning around there. We can see there's a lot of people starting together. This is actually the first day of Bilderberg. They have been doing preparations up to this point. They blocked off the hotel from Tuesday on, just so they could, I guess, get the place disinfected. You know, I can imagine they're going around with these little things they put on the toilet seat lids for Henry Kissinger and company so that they know that they've disinfected the whole place from all those rabble that would normally go in there and spend several $1,000s a night to stay in that hotel. They're going to get the place cleaned up and debugged in every sense of the word. So we're going to be joining them before too much longer. But again, we were talking about Lindsey Graham and deciding who and who is not a journalist. Now, understand that the First Amendment does specifically mention the press, but it is not just the press that has free speech. Every American has free speech, and every American has freedom of religion. It's not just churches or church leaders who have freedom of religion. It's every single person. And I misplaced the article here somewhere, but there is a, just breaking in the last couple of days, there was a fellow who was a valedictorian, and he was prohibited from making any statements about his Christian belief, and they stopped the prayer. When he got up to make his speech, he tore up his approved speech and said what he wanted to. That's what we all have to do. That's the spirit that we need from bloggers. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Alex from Bilderberg in London, right after the break. Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex. Alex is in London, confronting Big Brother, going places the mainstream media will not go. And we have, there's a 6-hour difference between the time here in Austin and the time in London. So he's been out at Bilderberg today, bullhorning and speaking and doing quite a bit of work earlier. And we've got a video that was uploaded live from there that we're going to cut to in just a second. Alex is on his way back to the hotel where he's going to come in and start doing the show in just a few minutes. Let's go to that cut right now.
Mainly the media moguls and people like Peter Thiel are openly debating on the real agenda this year, going public and having real transparency. And so I tell you now, it's time for you to speak to the press, and it's time for you to be honest about the things you've done before more of you get indicted like you did back in the 70s attorneys with the Lockheed Martin scandal. So know this, we're aware of your lobbying, we're aware of you behind the closed doors, trying to get your fingers into the government stream of money, and we are here to point out that this is going on, and it's outrageous that many of you are worth 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 billion that attend this, and that you would make the taxpayers fit most of the bill for the iron fence that you've demanded that be built around the compound that you're meeting in. It is disgusting, and it's nothing but a exclamation point illustrating how we pay for your whole life and your whole world, and most of you are a bunch of stinking parasites. Freedom for my children in the future and living. They're already trying to merge the North American Union that Bush signed back in 2005 in secret, but that got leaked, with the European Union. Those transatlantic deals are already being made. We know that's their plan to remove local control from the county, city, state, federal level. I want my U.S. government back. I don't want my representatives being puppets bought off in the dark behind steel fences. I want the criminal lobbying to stop now, and I want a future for my children.
What would you like to be doing in 5 years' time or 10 years' time?
In 5 years' time, I would like to be basically off the air. And I'd like to be...
take a year off.
No, I'd like to be a farmer on our family farm.
Oh, right.
That's what I would like to do. And I would like to see the globalists fall like the old Soviet Union. I'd like to see most of them, after a trial, obviously be sent to prison for the crimes against humanity that they've committed. And I would like to basically hand over the reins of my media operation to some of my crew to continue to muckrake. But if we weren't in such dire straits, I would not be broadcasting 7
We're going to
days a
continue
week.
with that. We've got Alex coming up in just a few minutes, and we've got a lot of people who don't carry the first 5 minutes of the hour, so we're going to come back and play the rest of that in the next segment. But if you don't think that it's making a difference, take a look at the crowd that's there. This is a meeting that didn't exist 10 years ago in most people's minds, and it's something that the mainstream American press is still not covering. But it's getting a lot of press everywhere else, and a lot of people are becoming very aware of what's going on there, primarily because of people like Alex. Drudge has carried our reports. We've also got a lot of help from The Guardian in the UK. And if you don't think that things are changing, take a look at this. We now have House voting to delay bulk ammunition purchases by the DHS. This is coming from The Hill. It says the House late Wednesday voted to stop the Department of Homeland Security from entering into new contracts to buy millions of rounds of ammunition until the Department of Homeland Security reports to Congress on the need for ammo and its cost. Now, understand that this is something that just as recently as a couple of weeks ago, we were still being criticized by National Review and Rachel Maddow for this, saying that it doesn't exist, that it's a figment of our imagination, that it's a conspiracy theory, even though we linked to the actual RFPs from DHS. So now we see some actual action being taken. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more from Alex and Bilderberg. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex. Alex is going to be joining us at about another 10, 15 minutes, and he's going to be joined live at his hotel room with Max Kaiser. So that's going to be an interesting segment. I'm sure they're going to have a lot to talk about, not just Bilderberg, but a lot of economic issues as well. And, it's not just the economic issues. We see what Bilderberg has been planning since at least their second meeting in 1955, and that is the European Union and the EU and the economic disaster that has created for the European people. And the way they've been able to put in their own bankers in charge of duly elected democratic leadership. So they're destroying national sovereignty. They're destroying the economies of Europe. And so it's working out just fine for the Bilderberg people, but it's not working out too well for the peoples of Europe, and it's not going to work out too well for the rest of humanity. If you've seen the pictures of when we've been covering the Grove Hotel, you've seen this statue that they've got of a kind of a half-human, half-robot. The flesh is falling off of it as it's crawling on its hands and knees. You can't tell if it's going into the dust or if it's coming up, and it's half-human, half-robot. Well, that is the singularity They're actually putting out an artwork. They're telling us where they want to go. I mean, this unification, there's a picture of it right now on the monitor. Real creepy statue. They're telling us where they want to take us. And they've been talking about it. They openly talk about their plans, just as they openly talked about the unification of Europe and openly talked about a world government and a new world order. People don't want to believe where these guys want to go. And it is kind of unbelievable, this singularity. Frankly, I don't believe they can pull it off. I'm a Christian. You're not going to convince me that they can transfer their soul, their consciousness into some kind of a machine. But they can kill a lot of people trying to do it. These are mad scientists. This is from Kurzweil's own website. This is Ray Kurzweil, and he is now the chief scientist for Google. And he is very much into the transhumanism whole thing. He's done documentaries on it. He has conferences about it. He is one of the major proponents of it. And now he is the chief scientist of Google. And in this column, he has people, he follows technology, and he looks at different things that he thinks are moving in the direction that are going to allow him to merge with a machine and live forever and become some kind of a god who can travel to the distant stars and live forever. He believes that he's going to be able to bring back his father's consciousness somehow, his father who's now deceased. This guy is radically crazy, but he is a chief science officer for Google, and he has developed a lot of very impressive technology in the past. He's a very dangerous person, far more dangerous than someone like, say, the Unabomber. Now, here's a question. He said, this person says, "How are you? My name is Noga. I'm a 16-year-old girl from Tel Aviv, Israel. First of all, I want to say I've read one of yours, and it was fascinating. Secondly, I want to ask you a question. I'll start from the beginning. She wants to know about human rights and what the line is going to be between human rights and rights for robots as they gain consciousness. She says, as a huge science fiction fan, I chose the subject of human and robot rights in the future. I struggled with a lot of questions, still struggling with them, and I was hoping that you might be able to help me since you deal with robots and machines in the future." And it goes on about that for quite some time. She has a very long question. Now, here's what he has to say. He says, "My view of the future is that we will merge with the machines. They are already extensions of ourselves, even if most of them are not yet in our bodies and brains. But technology is shrinking, and by the 2030s, intelligent machines will be the size of blood cells. And we will have millions of nanobots in our bloodstream, augmenting our immune system." Oh, he's been talking to Bill Gates, I guess, about his new vaccine program, huh? "And going into our brain and extending our thinking into the cloud. The non-biological portion of our intelligence will rapidly expand exponentially, so that by the 2040s, we will be almost entirely non-biological. So we will become the machines." That's what he imagines. And these are the same people who want to see the world's population reduced by anywhere from 90 to 99%. See, they want to be the ruling global elite. We're talking about the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. You know, the kind of people that are meeting at Bilderberg, the kind of people that have this eugenics agenda. And they openly proclaim it with things like that statue that's on its knees out there. I don't know what it's called, a Skeletor or something like that. It truly is a creepy skeleton. And we're joined now live by Alex and Max Kaiser in London. Hello, Alex.
I'm not ready to go to him yet.
Okay, he's not ready just yet. So he'll be with us in just a moment. They're still setting up some technical issues there. We also have, in breaking news, the signing stage just began for the UN Arms Trade Treaty. Now, this is something that is set up to increase the government's scope and depth of registration. This was something that passed in the UN. It still has to be ratified in the United States. And there is some hope. This is an article from the New American, I believe. And yes, it is. It's the New American. And they're talking about the fact that there has been some pushback from some senators who are supporting our constitutional rights, our God-given rights, and they have put some language in that would effectively block this. But we also have to worry about the danger that it only takes 2/3 of the senators who are present to sign on to a treaty. It's not 2/3 of the senators, but 2/3 who are present. And they have until sometime in August, I believe, if I read the article correctly, before this expires. So they have that long to sign on to it. So throughout the summer, we have to worry about Obama and other Democrats coming in and signing this under the cover of darkness. And we have some other information here from some other breaking news. We've got some classified documents talking about how CIA drone strikes often killed unknown people. This is from Russia Today, and that's no new breaking news, but we do have some breaking news from Alex, so let's go to him right now. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. He's not ready just yet. Okay. It's not new that drone strikes have been killing unknown people, that they've been killing masses of people. And we now have a former drone operator say that he is haunted by his part in more than 1,600 deaths. A former Air Force drone operator who says he participated in missions that killed more than 1,600 people remembers watching one of the first victims bleed to death. Brandon Bryant says he was sitting in a chair at a Nevada Air Force base operating the camera when his team fired 2 missiles from their drone at 3 men walking down a road halfway around the world in Afghanistan. The missiles hit all 3 targets, and Bryant said he could see the aftermath on his computer screen, including thermal images of a growing puddle of hot blood. The guy was running forward, missing his right leg. And I watched this guy bleed out, and I mean, the blood is hot, looking at the thermal image. This is it's so tragic. Like I said, when we have a government that openly assassinates anyone that they want to anywhere in the world, it is a matter of time before that happens here in the U.S., and we've already seen what appears to be the FBI executing people who might have a different version of their official story. And one last thing before we go to Alex, I would encourage you to take a look at an Operation Paul Revere entry called American Drone. We posted it on our YouTube channel by permission. It's part of the Operation Paul Revere contest, and it goes over this very thing, a very good short film dramatizing exactly what we're seeing here, and that is people who are engaged in these unlawful acts developing a conscience about it. Now we're ready to go to Alex now. We've got him on the line. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, David, thanks for being there. We're going to come back after the break with Max Kaiser here in our little makeshift studio from Watford, north of London. Thanks a lot. Ride shotgun there for us in case we have any technical difficulties. And if you'd like people to see the entry you talked about, have the crew post it in the featured news section so people can see it at Infowars.com. That is a really great idea. Thank you very much, David Knight. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a lot of other news other than Bilderberg that I really want to get to. There is a huge amount of awakening now inside the United States dealing with the issue of illegal spying. Here are just some of the headlines today. Obama administration collecting phone records of millions of Americans daily. Secret court order requires Verizon to hand over all call data. White House defends critical tool against terrorist threats when they run al-Qaeda now publicly. We've gone from that being a theory to absolute admitted fact, but still they take all our rights because of their terrorist. Specifically target Americans, not foreigners, all completely illegal. Homeland Security laptops, phones can be searched based on hunches. NSA sees all phone, sex, banks, and emails. Of course they do. NSA agents have gone public about how much they enjoy listening to you and your wife have sex, everything. And then they go on here, FBI wants a backdoor to all software. That already goes on. CIA will spy on you through your dishwasher. 1984, published 64 years ago today. That's the smart way drudgereport.com takes all the latest breaking news and then puts it together with 1984 has now arrived 60 plus years later, 64 years ago today. And I'm in the country, Airstrip 1 of 1984. That's a story. That's a report. That's information. Today, 1984, 64 years after it was published in 1948, and we have gone beyond it. But we kind of have two worlds and a paradox here. This great tyranny that's beyond 1984, but still people think they're free, think there's free press, think they have a right, so they really are free. But you have this corrupt world trying to absorb everything, and it's taken over the banking, it's taking over the media, it's using government regulators to shut down their competition. It is truly unprecedented. So when we come back, we're going to have Max Kaiser in studio to talk about the amazing coverage. I got interviewed, no exaggeration, by like 10 international media outlets today. So the word is really getting out, and we saw Queen Beatrix and more. Stay with us. All right, folks, I am here with Max Kaiser live in studio, and I do intend to take some of your calls in the next hour, so crew, make me do it, because I want to hear from people specifically that are in the UK, the hundreds of people that were already out there today. And I predicted just hundreds the first day, probably 1,000 the next day, and then maybe 2,000 on Saturday when everybody can get up here. And there is parking. Well, I don't want to get into logistics. We need to do an article on logistics for people for Infowars.com/Bilderberg. Now, Max Kaiser was a very successful stockbroker on Wall Street before he retired at an early age, the inventor of the Hollywood Stock Exchange virtual trading system used by Counter and Fitzgerald. That's now used on many trading markets around the world. You know who he is. He doesn't need to be introduced. And he's had TV shows on BBC, Al Jazeera, RT right now, Press TV. You name it, he's got it. And I wanted to get his take on Bilderberg 2013, so he's here. But I got to say this. Max Kaiser kept saying, you got to come to Europe, you got to come to England. I'd been here like 7 years ago and been here before that. And maybe every 50th person I would cross down the street, would say, hey, Alex Jones. I got mobbed. A third of the people on the train, just walking down the street, people hear my voice. We have more listeners in England of every race, color, and creed, religion than we have in the United States, in Austin, Texas, my main command center. Max, it's great to have you here. I don't want to talk about myself here, but you brought this up today. But I mean, what does this mean? Not about Alex Jones, that alternative media is that popular, because everybody knows you too.
Well, as I've been saying when I've been on your show before, is that when I travel around Europe, people ask me about Alex Jones. And I think it's because English is the universal language around the world, and people are hungry for alternative media, and they gravitate toward Alex Jones. So, yeah, you're well known all over Europe, everywhere I've gone. Even when I was in Cairo, people in the Tahrir Square would say, we listen to Alex Jones. So here you are in Bilderberg, here you are in Watford, and I personally have had a bit of a learning curve because, you know, my feeling about Bilderberg over the years has been that, do I really, really care about Bilderberg? But I think this year is a watershed year, where now they've got their media kit, they're on the media offensive, they realize they're under the scrutiny, and they're now being positioned as yet another one of these Davos, G8, IMF, global conferences where people get together, and they shouldn't be doing what they're doing behind closed doors. And thanks to the effort from you and other independent media now, we're finally getting somewhere with this, I think.
It's incredible. I want to get into the breaking news. I mean, I talked to the well-known guy on Newsnight. He's like one of the biggest TV personalities here in the country. I forget his name. What is it, Watson? John Sargent. You know, this famous guy. You know who he is. You've been on BBC as a host. And they told us, they said, no, Bilderberg's going to probably give us an interview. They're pretty freaked out by this. I went and met with him. He interviewed me. He goes, I'm going to have a special lunch now. And he got in his car and, from what I saw, drove in. I was like, oh, special lunch. This has never happened. And it's because first they wanted to be secret, so nobody talked about them. Now they realize being secret's blown up in their face. And again, there's other big top globalist meetings, but it's all about that key word. When we come back from break, you're going to break down. You crystallize it. It's collusion. Why is Bilderberg dangerous?
Well, that's the key word in my mind, is that you've got guys here organizing the scandals that we'll be reading about in 5 years' time. So, for example, this year, the big scandal with Apple and these other big companies not paying their taxes. Well, the system whereby they don't pay tax is worked out in meetings like this a few years ago. So they get together. It's very anti-competitive. They engage in collusion. They figure out how to bring in people like KPMG and the other big accountants and the money managers and the politicians to work out how to minimize their taxes and to dominate markets. And it's very anti-competitive. That's the problem with these organizations, is that they're anti-free trade, anti-American. It's almost anti-capitalist. They just want to have price fixing, market manipulation, monopoly pricing, rent seeking, and they do it behind closed doors, and they're colluding. That's the word, collusion, and that's what we should be against.
And we're in the middle of probably one of the biggest lobbying scandals ever in UK history. There's the big secret lobby. They've been indicted before with Lockheed Martin for aircraft deals, overcharging the people in the Netherlands with Prince Bernhard. So he has to send his daughter, the Queen, now. Now the King reportedly is going to be here. By the way, Leanne McAdoo got photos of the Queen of the Netherlands driving in, Henry Kissinger, David Rockefeller. I mean, they do not want this discussed. We're going to go to break in a minute. We're going to come back with the one, the only Max Kaiser. into the next hour, and he's going to take some of your phone calls. We'll have to rig him up with a headset to be able to do that. But Max Keiser is right here with me. I want to talk about that lobbying, and I want to talk about how the mainstream media has screwed the pooch, as they say, by denying any of this exists for so long, and now they're playing catch up. So where he sees all of this going is people discover that the terrible policies that these guys are carrying out are the ones destroying so much of our society. I'm Alex Jones with Max Keiser at maxkeiser.com. Continual coverage at Infowars.com/Bilderberg. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we could not be doing this without the support of all you, the radio listeners, and our AM and FM affiliates out there across the United States. So be sure and support our local AM and FM affiliates by supporting their local sponsors or becoming a sponsor. And please remember, we are selling Pro Pure water filters at 15% off with promo code WATER15, and that is financing, or I'll lose my baboon butt. We're financing this operation in a win-win with ProPure, with the British-made filters, the Pro One filters, all of it stainless steel. That's how I'm financing this trip with a sale, win-win-win, the lowest price anywhere, 15% off. Promo code WATER15 at Infowars store.
I can drink my own pee.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, plugging our sponsor that way.
Unbelievable.
Water.
You're stuck in a desert island and you have nothing to drink but your own pee. It's Pro Pure filters. That's the kind of survival techniques you need to learn. And I endorse it 100%. I have one. Everyone should have one.
You really have one?
Absolutely. I'm thinking about getting one. Absolutely. I may be getting one.
It's not like a Frank Herbert still suit. You can't crap in it yet.
No, well, that's coming, isn't it? Because the technology is always evolving. But that in France, they call that foie gras.
La chambre de béton les dégommants.
I did media.
Jeté en coin de l'ébu.
Yeah, there was a media scrum out there following all this, and I did one interview in French, which I was very proud of. The French reporters seemed to think my French was pretty good. I may have caused a little problem politically in France, but, they're so screwed.
Well, let me just stop for a minute and finish up plugging here. Oh, yeah. Also, Infidel Body Armor, infidelbodyarmor.com. I want to thank them. We want to thank efoodsdirect.com/Alex. They think they still got a free shipping deal going. One of the best deals you can get out there. So that's what's financing all this. Plus, I try to go out and find really good products. If you hear me endorsing it, I believe in it. Books, T-shirts, videos, films, InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. Now, here's the problem. I get up here on air, and I have hundreds of great points I want to make as I'm driving over here or as I'm getting ready to go live on air. And then I go on air, and I don't cover it all. So Max is going to talk here for about 10 minutes because he's got plenty to say. He doesn't need to get ready. I'm going to write some notes of points I want to make that are important and all the groundbreaking stuff that's going on. And just the fact that I was told by 2 senator aides and a major media mogul, I mean a guy worth very close to $1 billion, that Peter Thiel's a good guy. He'd like to meet with you. And I just didn't follow up on it. I was just like, no, thanks. I probably should have said, yeah, put me on the airplane right now. That, hey, Bilderberg, the new people don't like what's happening, and they want to fix things. Yeah, the globalists have stolen the whole world through fraud. Now they want to play nice. But the point is that I'd play nice if they would just stop Agenda 21, stop the shutdown of society. So I've got all these huge things I need to get to, and Max does as well, and I'm going to kind of collate those and cover them, and we're going to be taking your phone calls. Max is very gracious. He had international media, and I'm not bragging, it's just showing that now we've gone from nobody at these things to, I'm not exaggerating, I was interviewed by Italian media, Russian, Al Jazeera, Press TV, 5 BBCs, 6 BBCs actually, and a bunch of others, so it's like 11 or 12 international outlets. It's already airing. I was interviewed for the Alex Jones show, the top morning show with the attractive woman named Alex Jones. I'd say, hey, you can marry me, and then you won't have to change your name. Of course, I love my wife. It's a joke. Honey, it's a joke. But that's why they actually wanted me on, was to make that joke, so I learned that joke from them. But I want to get serious here with Max Keiser. Max, earlier, you were ranting as we were driving in the car incredibly eloquently about why Bilderberg is important, about what they're setting up, about what they're doing, about where this is going, and the fact that their policies have put them in charge, but everybody knows they did the robbing. So recap all those points you made and why you think this year is so important. Max Keiser at maxkeiser.com.
Okay, Alex Jones. Well, as I was saying before the break, leading up to this year, Bilderberg had a bit of negative connotations because it was almost synonymous with this idea of conspiracy therapy.
Conspiracy therapy. They can electroshock therapy us, and we love government.
Exactly. So they just put the prods in there,
brain in our
set it up to 800 megawatts. therapy, conspiracy therapy. So it's a theory, and it's like synonymous with this idea. So, talking about it, it almost puts you into a category instantaneously of where there's a credibility issue. But because of guys like yourself and others, you keep hammering and hammering and hammering. Now I think there's a breakthrough where you understand now that what's really Bilderberg is another one of these confabs where people get together and they plan economic sabotage for themselves and economic manipulation, financial manipulation, et cetera. And they're doing this all by themselves, for themselves. And now, as you point out, the global media is kind of focused on this. I myself, I will admit this, I have not been Mr. Bilderberg following for the last few years.
Have you been covering Davos and stuff where they're doing the same thing?
Yeah, I cover these things. I have. But now I think because you've made it such an item, it's hard to ignore it now. And then this is what you've been good at, is putting the focus of indie media.
That's a question. Media owned and paid for by these people never wanted to cover it. What does it mean that they're all forced to cover it?
Well, there's a double-edged sword there. Number one, they're forced to cover it. That's great. Number two, there is now an opportunity for them to try to use their media resources to spin it. They'll come out with a press release and they'll say, well, what we're doing here is we're saving the world and we're doing good things. And they'll sound more like Davos. They'll sound more like the IMF. And they'll come up. Remember 10 or 15 years ago, ExxonMobil, was being attacked by Greenpeace. And then within a few years, Exxon would use the images of Greenpeace to promote Exxon. So
Children's charity brought you to by Bilderberg.
Exxon, you see beautiful vistas and oceans and forests brought to you by Exxon. And they would just borrow all the imagery from Greenpeace and they use it to promote Exxon. So I think that you can see this with Bilderberg.
Exxon didn't bring me beautiful oceans?
No. So now that Bilderberg's been exposed as part of this group of colluding monopolist oligarchs, they're going to have to come out with a more nuanced PR spin, and they're going to have to try to promote themselves and do battle. So this is the information war. You have brought them to the battle. So now the battle begins. So you drew them out. Now you're in open battle, open field battle. So that's where we are this year.
Yeah, people ask, why cover Bilderberg? Well, first we draw out the shadow government. And then now we've got to deal with their propaganda corps.
You drew them out and done an excellent job doing it.
I mean, we brought them out, all of us together. But getting into crony capitalism, if their own minutes have been leaked and come out, that's what they're doing. The easiest way to make money is just shut down your competition or get a government contract. And you've got government regulators meeting with the industries they're regulating. I mean, this is obviously illegal on so many fronts. I mean, how does this tie into the big lobbying scandal right now in the UK?
Here's a good, there's a huge lobbying scandal in the UK, but here's a prime example. You've got the Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, who is launching something called Help to Buy, which is like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, if you remember that from America. They government subsidized housing, and they created the subprime housing bubble, which burst and caused this huge financial crisis.
And when the people can't pay it back, it doesn't matter because it's bailed out. They still lose their house, but the mega bankers get the money.
Right. So now George Osborne wants to bring that to the UK.
So they get the house and the money.
So they take at a group like this, like a Bilderberg, what they'll do, and what they probably did last year was they said, how can we reinflate the housing bubble and still keep the bondholders, which are the people in this room, whole? Here's an idea. We'll institute a government guarantee Help to Buy scheme, model it on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, even though those programs have already been discredited, and we'll reinflate this bubble. We won't do anything about jobs. We won't do anything about competition. We won't do anything to help the economy. We're just going to reinflate this bubble. We're going to launch that scheme, and now this is exactly what he's done. We broke it on our show. We said this is a Ponzi scheme. We got letters from George Osborne's office saying you can't call it a Ponzi scheme. We need to be more fair. But within 2 months, every media outlet in the UK is now calling it a Ponzi scheme. But gatherings like Bilderberg is where they figure out how to put together these Ponzi schemes, because you need the cooperation from KPMG, Deloitte Touche, and the big global accounting firms. You need cooperation from global governments. You need cooperation from global market manipulators and bankers. So they go to their meetings. They come up with a scheme like that. They save their buddies in the bond market. They get the politicians to roll it out as an official policy, and now we're seeing the result of it. So that's just one example. And, of course, George Osborne's at Bilderberg this year. They're going to follow up on this scheme. It is hatched behind doors at one of these confabs. It's enormously destructive. And who knows next year what they will have cooked up this year. We won't know the damage that they're doing today until next year when it's rolled out officially as government policy, and we see the damage that it'll cause next year and the year after that.
And just adding to what you said, it's so frustrating when I was interviewed by 6 different BBC outlets, and only a couple of them were halfway fair, They would say, so you say there's a meeting here. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're crazy. We got this on video. And I was like, no, there's a meeting. And she's like, no, there's not. And then later she goes, I was trying to provoke you. No, they were trying to just play this game, insulting their viewers, but that doesn't work anymore. We've gotten the National Archives minutes. We've gotten it. And they are in there establishing the EU, not to create freedom, but to implode national sovereignty, as the EU's now done, to sign the people of the EU, France, Germany, all of it, onto these trillions of debt that aren't theirs. It's the same thing on the U.S. It's the very same crew. And then I interviewed, we've got to upload this, by the way, Paul. I totally forgot. I've got the interview. It's on the white phone right here with one of the UKIP EU members of parliament. And he was reminding me that it was a Nazi plan to create the European Economic Union under a free trade agreement to manage everyone economically. That was Hitler's plan. And then they basically adopted it. The British and the U.S. did, because they adopted everything else. Oh, run our rockets, run our CIA, run everything. It's not even so much Nazi as it's like, oh, we'll take that. That's a really great plan. We like your black uniforms. You're really evil. We're impressed with you. Will you tell us how to do everything? And Prince Bernhard, the Nazi, who's daughter of the Queen, is advocating over to the new king. She's here. Leanne McAdoo, our photographer, photographed it. She's up there uploading it right now to Twitter at Real Alex Jones and on the Reporter Twitter. I mean, it's just the realization that creepy CIA, MI6, and Nazis set this up as a creepy combine monopoly capitalist organization, and that they're doing all of this, and that we've gotten all these minutes over the years that have leaked out in National Archives, that they are in there like LIBOR fixing the I mean, here's an example. Google now, I wanted to ask you about this. Google, but I'll talk about the Nazi thing. Google, okay. Googleberg is merging right now. We confirmed that for our inside source, why they were so mad we were in the hotel.
Googleberg?
Well, yeah, when we sent people in, because we have sources inside that were at the meeting serving people last year, and then again a few weeks ago, Google meets there. Google planned the Arab Spring there. They brag. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. But I'm just telling the viewers so they know, we're not just saying this. That's why the security had tears in their eyes when they caught us in there again, because they've all been threatened with being fired. We really got people in there serving. And then once we said it, it was like, oh, my God, it's true. Then we actually found articles about it, pieces of it, confirming what our sources said. Then I talked to a high-level Senate source. They said, no, that's the plan. They believe in the technocracy, Max, of merging, this whole system. So the old men who are on average over 80 or 97, like David Rockefeller, they're passing the satanic baton. And they're planning to merge this whole deal. But meanwhile, because they're desperate, they're like, how do we control the media while all this is going on? And then now Bilderberg is metastasizing out. What is your take on all of that when they say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, when the international media interviewed me that these guys are important?
Well, for the last 50, 60 years, there's been a tug of war between the creation of debt to fund growth and the subsequent downturns or recession that would occur every 5 or 7 years to kind of purge the system of bad investments and malinvestments. What happened in 2007, 2008 is the bad debts that have been accumulated for 50 years suddenly got so huge that understanding went out there in the global community that these debts would never be paid. And this is when the panic set in. So here we are 5 or 6 years into this crisis. These economies are still shrinking. They're still contracting in Europe and in Greece and in Cyprus and in France now just announced unemployment numbers that are quite high. These economies are still shrinking in ways that we haven't seen in the post-World War II era. This is the longest running economic contraction we've seen. So all the tricks that these guys have used in the past to inflate debt, to do whatever they can do to get some GDP growth have failed. And that's why this is becoming more urgent. And that's why a Bilderberg group, they hope to come out of here with some new plan to create some kind of growth somewhere, but it's just not materializing. So it brings up
because they've already created a monopoly. They'll only allow growth that makes them fatter.
There's just too much debt. Yeah. So this old skeletons in the closet, like the Nazis, they're back. And what's happening in France? There was a skinhead attack of a left winger, and he's now brain dead. There's a neo-Nazi party in Greece. The Nazis are back in Europe because like Ghostbusters. If you don't keep them at bay, they will find their way back into the mainstream.
Hitler was brought in by a bad economy.
So, well, I made the point on my blog recently that the Versailles Agreement after World War I had put these onerous conditions on Germany, which led to the rise of a psycho, a madman. Now, the onerous conditions after the 2008 break, the debt that's been put into place around the world that people have to suffer, what they call austerity, is now having a global reaction. I call it the global insurrection against banker occupation. There's a global reaction now to these debts that were unfairly imposed. You go back to Versailles and you see how similarly the many were asked to suffer the consequences of the mistakes of the few. We had a few bankers create enormous mistakes in the years 2000 period, the dot-com boost, and then the subprime collapse. And they've been asking the global population to pay for those mistakes. And after 5 or 6 years now, since it hasn't worked, we have the emergence of radical extremists. Right-wing groups like neo-Nazis are now back in the picture. So this is history repeating itself in a lot of ways.
And then they'll also fund fake left-wing groups to give a communist answer to the crisis, and the media will give it attention instead of just getting back to common sense, real free market. That's what's so frustrating. They're scapegoating free market for what the mega banks have done when they're the opposite of a free market. They have protected, guaranteed markets with my money. The old saying of risk is made public, but the profits are made private.
Yeah, well, as you know, it's not about the collapse or the failure of free markets. We don't have free markets. We have markets that have been co-opted by certain groups that have been able to change the way markets operate entirely.
Flash trading.
Well, you've got the flash crashes, and what that all is about is that this whole idea that a market should be equally balanced between risk and reward has been destroyed using derivatives, which lead to things like flash trading. So that risk is now concentrated in the population, in the many. The rewards are taken or skimmed off by the very top.
Because if we have to bail out their mistakes, why shouldn't they make a mistake and then we get bailed out? We bail them out, but now we're bailed out.
It's moral
and now it's our debt.
They call it moral hazard. In other words, they keep bailing out the bad guys and they keep doing bad things. But I'll give you a good example. Here's the stock market at 15,000 or so in the Dow Jones. It's going to crash at some point, probably in the near future. Those who understand how the derivative markets work, they already have their insurance on. They've spent 1 or 2% buying a put or a contract that gives them the ability not to suffer any losses once the market crashes. But the vast majority of people out there are completely unhedged. They're completely exposed to this market. So when there is this crash that's going to come, there'll be another $10 to $15 trillion of equity wiped out amongst the vast majority of people out there that got sucked in at the top. But those people who orchestrated this maneuver, they're completely protected. They have no risk, no skin in the game whatsoever. For 1 or 2% of the value you have at risk, you can buy an insurance product in the form of a put and insulate yourself entirely against any losses. And that's this asymmetric warfare that goes on between people who have.
Absolutely. We're going to go to break. We're going to go to break, come back and explain that more. And we're going to also get him hooked up with some headphones the next hour and take some phone calls for Max Kaiser, 800-259-9231. If you're in the UK and been part of the protest or you've been following it online in the UK or Europe, I want to give you a chance on air. I want to hear from you, 800-259-9231. I'm Alex Jones of Infowars.com, live streaming video, Prisonplanet.tv.
To thank you for
Going down now. We got to get Max Kaiser hooked up soon with some audio in the next segment to be able to take calls. We go into the next hour. I haven't even gotten into the international news in context of this, but we're just discussing the fact that there's shadowy groups that want to influence policy and who want to take over government to get a hold of your tax money and banker bailouts and corporate welfare. And they're like, oh, that doesn't exist. Ha ha, conspiracy. Everybody knows there's no powerful interest meeting. Sure, we charge thousands a year per county and everywhere in the U.S. or in England with conspiracy. Two people decide to rob a liquor store. It's a conspiracy. But powerful people never conspire. But Max agrees. It's outrageous. He agrees. But Stacey Herbert, one of the producers and host of Max Kaiser's many shows here, she was reading me a great Adam Smith quote, the famous Wealth of Nations economist, and I guess that was in chapter 4, page 145, paragraph C27, an incredible quote about conspiracies. But we all know Adam Smith was nobody. I mean, this is a lie. This is a conspiracy theory.
Exactly. And a lot of times when these people gather outside the likes of Bilderberg or G8, the BBC News and mainstream media will call them anti-capitalist. So it's important to listen carefully to what Adam Smith, in The Wealth of Nations, no other book is more important to the ideals of capitalism than The Wealth of Nations. And he said, people of the same trade seldom meet together, even for merriment and diversion, but the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public or in some contrivance to raise prices. And that is often quoted frequently. I've heard that a few times. But nobody continues with the rest of it in light of what the governments are doing to enable this. He then said, but though the law cannot hinder people of the same trade from sometimes assembling together, it ought to do nothing to facilitate such assemblies, much less to render them necessary.
Which the police are ass backwards guarding them right now, doing the opposite of that common sense.
Well, and George Osborne and his labor shadow, Ed Balls, are attending. Why are they attending? They don't need to attend. They shouldn't
And
be.
haven't they had the attorney general there too?
I'm not sure about that.
I mean, this is outrageous.
Yeah. Well, it's outrageous that George Osborne should be at the moment, especially the fact that Amazon, Jeff Bezos, these people are currently in a very big brouhaha here about avoiding taxes. Well, not paying any
While
taxes.
lobbying to raise middle class taxes to bail out banks. See,
Exactly.
It's not enough that they're trying to get out of taxes. They want me to fit the bill for all them.
Yes. Well, this is the problem. You know, George Osborne has these austerity measures across the UK. And as we see, they're preparing for the G8. You know, they've created a Potemkin village to make it look like austerity is working as they're raising taxes on everybody here. Taxes.
Find that whole thing up there in Ireland where they put up the fake storefront.
In Farmina, where they're outside of Belfast, where they're having the G8 conference, that there's just devastation, right? The shops are all closed down. The butcher shops is dilapidated. The local shops are all dilapidated. So what they've done is they put posters up to make it look like it's
a literal wallpaper facade. That's like when the Queen of England goes to Africa, they'll have a soundstage with a fake village.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is unbelievable.
Right. This is what they're doing now in Ireland to make it look like the economy.
And then if you say that's paper wallpaper of a happy shop, you're the conspiracy theorist.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well,
Neo is a conspiracy theorist.
But that's
George Washington.
But that's a good point, is that the cops here should not be protecting these people gathering because, as Adam Smith said, they have a propensity to fix prices. They should not.
Well, exactly. Instead of making good products to win, it's easier to just buy off the government, shut everybody down. We're going to go to break here. Stacey, great point. You want to stay with us?
I'll chip in when necessary.
Well, it's great having you guys from MaxKaiser.com, Stacey Herbert, and, of course, Max Herbert here with us, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back after this quick break. Great job to the crew. Great job to all the sponsors. InfoWarsStore.com. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back live with Max Kaiser and Stacey Herbert. I'm your host, Alex Jones. I want to hear from UK callers. Their take on taxpayers having to pay for these globalists to meet here. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231. And sometimes people can't call from England on that. I forget the specific number we're supposed to give out with a certain prefix so that people are able to call. Maybe the network can text that to you, Richard, because I forgot sometimes people can't call that 800 number if they're in England. It's always good to remember that. 800-259-9231. But coming up, we're going to be taking your phone calls. Again, Max Kaiser is my guest. That was an amazing Adam Smith quote.
From Stacey.
From Stacey.
Yeah, Stacey made an excellent point there, as she always does on our show. But, if you want to follow up on that, I mean, the cops should not allow this gathering because we know that there'll be price collusion going on and price fixing, and that should be discouraged. These guys should be separated and forced to compete with each other, not collude with each other.
But according to them, they're not doing any of that. I mean, even though we have all the documents.
But, yeah, exactly. But we've known for 200 years now, since the publication of Wealth of Nations and Adam Smith, that this is the propensity of businessmen to do this. This is hard-coded into the DNA of free market capitalism for 230 years or so, that we know this is what's going to happen. So the people running our governments, like the Obama or the David Cameron, they should be out front and making sure these things don't happen. These people don't get together. That they should be forced to compete to make money instead of collude to make money.
You're absolutely right. We're going to come back and just open the phones up total to anybody that has a view on Bilderberg or where this is going at at 800-259-9031. Again, 800-259-99231, and we'll get you up and on the air. And I'll guarantee you the phone system is down with GCN, or I would be even seeing that those phones were all ringing right there. I see this occasionally, and then we figure out the phone system is down. But we'll get that phone system rebooted, 800-259-9031. I see that number so often, I just kind of mill it all together now, 800-259-9231. And if you're in the UK, the number to call in is 1-651-695-7755. Your country code, and then 651-695-7755. We'll get you up and on the air. Max, I want to go over some of the news in the economy, the scandals in Obama first. Then we're going to those phone calls with you here. But as we go to break here, how do you think Bilderberg is going to deal, and other shadow government meetings, now that they're being identified that there are special interests pulling the strings? Oh my gosh, what an epiphany. But that is an epiphany for the naive public that really thought the government loved them and was going to take good care of them.
I think they're going to roll out the public relations offensive. So we're going to start, Bilderberg is going to start branding itself, and we're going to start seeing ads for Bilderberg, the group that is doing good things for you. And this is one magical way that modern consumer culture has evolved, in that the people doing the worst things are able to roll out the most egregious propaganda ads to support what they're doing. So now that they've been identified as being part of the bad guys, the Monsanto, the Exxons, the Microsofts, they're part of the bad guys. So now they're going to have to come out with a lot of advertising and PR spin to somehow spin and promote themselves as the good guys. And since they own a monopoly position in the media outlets, we're going to have an excellent chance at doing so. But that's where indie media and Infowars, is going to be in an open war now. The war is now gone to the open field, and so that's a good for indie media, because it was hard to fight them when they were hiding in the shadows, as they have been. But now that they're out in the open, I think it's going to be easier to fight them.
We'll be right back with Max Kaiser and your phone calls from all over the world. I am your host, Alex Jones. And again, you can also follow the network at GCNlive.com. And we're streaming video right now at Infowars.com/Bilderberg or Infowars.com show. And we've got massive interviews coming up as well. In fact, I meant to upload.
Cal-Ben Soap Company can save.
I can barely contain myself. Steve Watson just arrived at the London to the Watford train station. They're at the Watford Junction right now, and there's government ministers, Balls and others, are there right now. And Steve Watson, have Steve go in and get video interviews on the train. Go in, engage. That's what I kept telling all the demonstrators and protesters. It isn't even important to sit out there in the sun with me all day and Max Kaiser tomorrow and Saturday and everything. That's important, but not as important as just being on the train, being in a restaurant. If you're a local hooker, they're probably going to be visiting you. I mean, you never know where these scum are going to pop up. And Steve Watson, who was with us yesterday reporting for Infowars.com, Paul's great brother with his political science degree, really helps out in his research. He was here with his fiance or girlfriend helping us do reporting. And then he went back to London where he lives. Well, now he's back and he's on the train with a whole bunch of Bilderberg people coming in, boom, landing in their jets and just hiding under the radar, coming right in here. So that's some of the breaking news. We have calls from England, from Kathleen and others. As soon as you hear calls hung up on, that's your chance to call in, 800-259-9231. If you're calling in from England, unfortunately, 800 numbers don't work for some people. So your country code is 011 and then 651-695-7755. But we're just here identifying the lobbyist. I mean, that really, Max, you're right. It's collusion. It comes down to the fact that we're just identifying. Look at Lindsey Graham. Isn't sure bloggers deserve First Amendment protection? And they're going on like England's calling for the UK to say, you have to be licensed to be media now, or we'll demand all your sources, or we'll shut you down. That's like fairness doctrine, because they can't win a debate with us. And we have separately, on top of this, got all these other just bizarre headlines where we'll take your DNA in the U.S. without warrant. So it's a unified agenda. New York Senate passes bill that would make it that will make annoying a cop a felony. Adon Salazar, Infowars.com, New York Senate Bill 2402, just so they don't like how you look. I saw a Florida arrest because the person gave a hateful look. So now, I mean, that's like going back to feudalism where you looked at the king or the lord wrong, Max, and so you're going to be disappeared now. This is just incredible. Max Kaiser, and then your phone calls.
No, yeah, it is like feudalism where if you're a friend of the people in the court, you have a shot at being part of the establishment, the elite. Everyone else has to be constantly on guard. It's a complete repudiation of everything that we learned during the Enlightenment. Adam Smith's, we just talked about it. It's repudiation of the free market capitalism. It's a repudiation of the Enlightenment. We're going back to medievalism.
But you can't argue gave us all this wealth. Tyranny and big government did not give us this.
Well, I mean, this is what I have a slight problem in the United States anyway, with the encroachment of, let's say, religious fundamentalism to some degree, because some of these guys like Lindsey Graham and others are going to start claiming that they have the divine rights.
Well, he just uses that as a front. They use the Christians.
Yeah, well, they're using the Christians in a way that will end up, they'll be starting to claim that they are operating under the divine right of kings and that they have the divine right to put people in jail because they were looked at funny. And this is what we're seeing happening in real time. It's quite alarming at the speed at which the U.S. is sinking into a hellhole, really, of a complete rightless.
By the way, you're always saying that, and I've got to say, I've seen some police state here, but most of the cops either say all I care about is rugby, or they say I'm a listener. And I'm really ashamed to say this because I say America's waking up, and it is to a great extent. I have been in England, and it is awake. I mean, I cannot walk down the street without having twice the attention I get in the United States, which again, I see as a radar or sonar ping. Man, let me tell you, you're right, Max. But how can Europe be under such deep tyranny? Is that why they're more awake?
Let's talk about the UK for a second, because in the UK, unlike the US, you have actually a left-wing press. There is a left in the UK. You have people who are in the Communist Party, and they have seats in Parliament, and there's a left-wing press. And you have real debate between what is identified as right-wing issues.
You have real libertarians like UKIP. They're good guys.
UKIP is challenging the people on the right, and you've got people, of course, who are identified with the left. But you end up with a lot more debate in terms of political agenda, which people are discussing, and it filters down to the man on the street and the rank and file in the police department, who are a lot more aware of some of these political debates going on. Whereas in the U.S., you've got the far right and the near right. They don't even have a center. It's all right-wing in the United States. There's no left at all. There's no liberal media at all.
Now, see, I would agree. I'd say it's all establishment. You got a fake left and a fake right. You would see liberal as like Thomas Jefferson liberal. But when Americans hear you say liberal, they're thinking the Maoist, at the Justice Department.
Well, yeah, because of the propaganda put out by people like Bilderberg, who like to keep people extremely focused on enemies that don't exist, on shying away from true media debate. So your perception of there being more, let's say, conversations with people who are in the blue-collar world, like cops and nurses and things like that, is because they have a much more dynamic, functioning media here in the UK. I mean, I'm curious to hear what
There's no doubt there's more choices.
What Watson's opinion is of this. He's a native British guy, and he might have a different opinion. But my thought is, compared to the States, you do have some more dynamism. Maybe I'm being hoodwinked, and that's not true. I'm curious what Watson has to say. Really,
that's an important video. You are curious?
I would like to know.
All right, Supreme Redcoat.
What was the point again?
The point is, the thought is, Alex was saying that he meets people on the street and they seem a lot more politically awake and aware. And I was saying, well, one of the reasons is that there's a more dynamic media here in the UK. There is a left, there is a right, there is more debate, at least. Doesn't mean people.
But there are also cops that go, all I care about is rugby.
It doesn't mean there's a lot more. They're not enjoying greater rights necessarily, but at least there's a lot more debate, given the diversity in media.
Or is it because they've been screwed harder?
What are your thoughts, maybe?
They're a few years ahead of it.
I think it's in America. America is isolated. A lot of Americans haven't even left America. They don't have passports. Whereas
they think it's a conspiracy theory that Europe even exists, literally.
Oh, yeah, whereas in Britain...
They think like when the U.S. ends, it falls off the earth.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. But in Britain, it's a tiny country. We're out looking at Europe. We're looking out. We're not looking inwards. A lot of Americans are looking inwards because they're not aware of anything that's happening in Europe. They don't leave the country very often. And you're right, there is more of a left-wing element in Britain compared to America, where a lot of it is centered around the Occupy movement, which was very easily infiltrated and steered off to something else. So, yeah, there's more diversity in terms of media and opinions. And you were saying yesterday, Alex, that you got the sense that people were more awake here. They'd heard of Bilderberg, but they may not have necessarily heard of you.
Oh, yeah. A lot of them didn't even know about it. Were telling me about the New World Order.
Yeah. And they were going, oh, yeah, who are you, by the way? So even without your massive impact, people are waking up, which is good because, you know, it's a diverse thing. But, yeah, I agree with Max. There's more kind of left-wing press.
But they're awake, but their solutions are big government. Because they see it going and stopping the big bankers, but the big bankers run big government. Yeah. So how do you
disagree with people on the left? Is that their solution is typically to enhance government or to streamline government, or there's a government or a solution, which I disagree with. But I think it's important to have that conversation because clearly government.
Well, there's like real leftists here. They're not like authoritarian gang like Obama.
Well, they would have a role in, as we were saying before, in regulating markets. This is where I disagree with people like Lou Rockwell, for example, who is a libertarian to the point of what he calls anarcho-capitalism, which is, he believes, markets are self-correcting and they're never wrong. I disagree in that markets must have some fundamental, rudimentary
It's like football has
regulation.
To have rules, or they will game them.
Right.
They're going to make the rules, which is they're going to screw you.
The problem with the markets today is that the rules are don't exist or they're not being enforced, and so people are vilifying capitalism. And then to get to your point, let me get to your point. There's that left.
Bail them out. Let them do what they want, but don't bail them out.
There's that.
My issue is don't let them have total freedom, but then they go to jail and they rip people.
But let me say this: the result of the rise of the mob, due to the collapse of fake capitalism, is identified as a left-wing reaction. But I would disagree with that. It's not. It is you could call it a populist reaction or a chaotic reaction, but you can't put a political label on it. But the right would say, look, they're the lefties and they're the mob and they're fighting us, and that's where Bilderberg will come out of this with their rebranding, that you will be positioned as a left-wing mob, a populist. That's how they'll
all the papers walking by newsstands. It's like communist to protest capitalist meeting.
But then,
when these are insiders, the opposite of a free market.
But if you go to Infowars.com and you're selling pure water filters, I mean, you're not selling, left-wing agenda. You are a businessman. You have a media outlet. You are part of an economy that values hard work.
Oh, yeah, leftists, I know, think it's bad to even sell a product. Let me make this point here because we're going to break, Max. We're going to come back with calls. This is really important. They try to scramble all the terms, I think is what we're getting to here. And here's Bilderberg that uses government to control its wealth and take over others. And then they call their opposition communist, which it's the opposite. I didn't really run into any communists out there today. I mean, it's my point. They're populist that don't want to be cheated. So that's what it comes down to.
There are hardcore left-wingers like Tony Benn, for example, is a famous left-winger. And when the left, the Labor government was in power, they have people who are titans, big wigs, big names in the left wing. And they got blown away by Tony Blair, who came in as New Labour. But as Margaret Thatcher said, as she was about to retire, one of her greatest achievements in life, when asked, what is your greatest achievement? She said, well, one of the greatest achievements was New Labour. In other words, New Labour became the right-wing establishment, and that killed Labour. That killed the left-wing politics in this country. So you had New Labour under Tony Blair, which is really just Thatcherism light, and then you had Thatcherism. And there hasn't really been anything since then.
Yeah, but it's all globalism because they've done that to the right wing. Again, all these terms mean nothing. The bottom line is we shouldn't bail out mega-rich bankers with our tax money while they lecture us all day that it's wrong to make $125,000 a year.
But you're saying that as a businessman, and yet the establishment will say you're saying that as a communist.
I know, but I'm saying it as somebody that wants to run my own life and not be fed on by a bunch of fat cat pigs. We'll be right back with your phone calls. And Max Kaiser, I'm Alex Jones. We're live from north of London, Bilderberg, 2013.
The government's Department of Homeland Security.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have not had time to upload it yet, but Gerard Batten, who's a big EU member of Parliament with UKIP, interviewed today for like 15 minutes. I've got two different parts. That'll be up tonight, tomorrow on the radio in the first hour with David Knight. Before I come in the second 2 hours, that will be aired here. Big interview. He's calling for a criminal investigation with UKIP of the Bilderberg Group.
Bravo!
Bravo!
You've done it. again. Another major score. Major accomplishment. Put that in the win column. I just found out that we're actually broadcasting the video, too. I thought it was just audio.
No, Max.
Look, here's this. This is a chart of the U.S.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the dollar is plunging right now.
The dollar is plunging. You can't see it. So
no, I know how to do it.
Oh, there you go. The dollar is plunging. And I want to talk about a prediction I made on your show 10 months ago. I said within 9 months, and I said April, there would be a big crash, a big event. And
here, start over.
Why? Because now we're on the air? What is wrong?
I had to move the mic.
What is wrong with you people? I said on your show 10 months ago there would be a major crash of some type, and probably in April. Here we are now in June, first week of June.
Month and a half later.
Okay, so the timing is pretty good. We've got
fortune favors the bold.
Yeah, major crash in the dollar. Looks like Japan is blowing up, as I said it would. Bond market yields are now rising, as I said
Look at
it
that
would.
drop. How much is it dropping?
It's huge. Okay, so let me make this point clear. I went on a limb and made a very specific prediction on your show because I was trying to out Gerald Celente, okay? I wanted to get a specific date so I could be the Prognosticator of the Year award. Well, I missed by 5 or 6 days, a few weeks, so Gerald still has the crown as top prognosticator in the world. But the point is that here we are on a major collapse. Dollar, bonds, it's all coming unglued in Japan. As I said, Alex, I want to go on record because most of the phone calls.
Wild Turdberg is meeting.
Yeah, these phone calls are going to be like, what about April? What about April? Here it is. This is all happening. This just is revolving in real time, and this is the crash. This is the Armageddon. This is the bondpocalypse. Now, additionally, I want to point out that I also would like to claim.
How much has it dropped?
That's huge. My prediction, if you were to price all of these securities against Bitcoin, then I'm absolutely correct that there was a major collapse in April. I know you don't want to go into the Bitcoin thing, but I just want to get that on record that against Bitcoin, I was exactly to the day. But against...
but let me ask you this question. Are you friends with Peter Thiel?
I'm not friends with Peter Thiel, but we are co-investors in a Bitcoin-related company called BitPay, which I encourage you at Infowars to accept. So that people with Bitcoins, there are billions of people with Bitcoins out there. They want to spend them at Infowars.com, but there's no way to do it. With BitPay, they can spend Bitcoin on your site. Yes, I'm commandeering the microphone. With BitPay, they can use Bitcoin to buy the Pro Pure water filters, to buy the Infowars T-shirt, to buy the Paul Watson fan club buttons, to buy the Alex Jones, I saw Alex Jones at the mall buttons and T-shirts and the Pro Pure and the hemp cigarette and all the porta potties. They can buy them with Bitcoin using BitPay, BitPay.com. Now, Peter Thiel and I are co-investors in BitPay. So
have you ever talked to him?
No, I have not talked to him. He is one of the gang from PayPal that has made $1 billion or so. We came together simply because we're co-investors through the CEO of BitPay, a guy named Tony Galippi, who has me investing in BitPay. But you got to accept Bitcoin. Bitcoin, accept Bitcoin.
All right, he's not had his medication. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, Max Kaiser is here with us. I promise your calls are coming up in the next segment. My only issue is I was told by a high-level media person. I'll just say this on air. I was allowed.
Walter Cronkite.
You know, he died a few years ago.
Jessica Savage.
No, I was told by it's a media owner.
Amy Goodman?
No, much bigger than that. I was told by a media owner at dinner a few months ago that Peter Thiel's a listener and he knows Bilderberg has problems and he's trying to get him to go public. I kind of, and by the way, would you ever want to meet Peter Thiel? We'll fly up there in a jet. And I'm like, I know not to tell rich people, yeah, I'll get on your private jet because it'll actually land. I've had that with Charlie Sheen. So the point is we're going to break. I want to get your take on this when we come back and we go to calls. Then I get told by two different senator connections. I'm going to say senators. It's just
Rand Paul.
No, not like
it was not. It wasn't Rand Paul.
Actually, wasn't. Actually, wasn't.
Peter Thiel.
Wasn't actually Rand Paul.
Oh, of course.
I was just told, no. You know, the globalists figured this out. Would you like to ever, talk to them? Also, they're going to be going public very, very soon. And then I talked to the BBC, and they say that. And then I talked to MI5. We had dinner with.
So what? You didn't. There's a premise there without.
No, I know. The point is they're reaching out to little old me.
About what?
What do you? I don't know. But my point is they must be.
If people are reaching out to you.
They must be in trouble.
What? What
if
are they
want
reaching out about?
No, that they're debating internally whether they're going to go public. We'll be right back with Max Kaiser and Alex Jones, Stacey Herbert. And this is, of course, a Paul Joseph Watson production. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We're on the march.
Max Kaiser wants Billy Idol and not Baker Street.
White wedding.
No, Baker Street's good. By the way, I keep trying to upload this UKIP. UKIP video.
Right? What happened?
And it just will not let me do it. Like 5 times we've tried, but it's going up on Infowars.com tonight. We'll tweet it out at Real Alex Jones. Follow us on Twitter. Follow Max at Max Kaiser. Also, again, you are funding our media operation. That's how we do it. The goal is to defeat the globalist. And he does this snore noise. ProPure, 15% off. Water, 15. Okay, I want to go to phone calls, but you had one other point that you wanted to make. We got Steve Watson coming in here about Ed Balls.
Talk about UKIP, okay? Nigel Farage became a global media sensation before he was even on the radar in British politics because of your show, because of RT. Russia Today, my network.
No, UKIP's told me that.
That's right. So that's, again, where the global media is exerting pressure and changing the political landscape. That's why Bilderberg now has to respond, because they look at Nigel Farage. If there was no Alex Jones, no RT, no global independent media space, Nigel Farage would not be getting 15% of the general vote in Britain. So this is really a global phenomenon. The BBC is so dusty and so old and so protected.
Arrogant.
They're totally arrogant, and they haven't changed at all in 30, 40 years. And after the so-called Hutton affair from a few years ago, they're completely afraid to do any breaking news whatsoever, any investigative journalism whatsoever. I've talked to journalists over at the BBC. They're like in a bomb shelter over there. They can't put their nose out and investigate anything.
By the way, Bilderberg kept driving in today with some paper, I haven't found it yet, that said child pedophile killer released. And they would use the paper to cover their face. And then, Stacey, you were telling me about your friend that tried to fly in here to, as the press, tried to come in here to cover. I want to get you in to talk about that. Tried to cover the whole pedophile stuff with Savelle before it broke, and they stopped her at the border. Our reporter got sent back as well. Go ahead.
Well, the pedophile scandals in this country have been around for a while, and it's a function, actually, of the very onerous libel laws in this country that prevent people from speaking out. The reason Jimmy Savile was able to violate 400 or 500 boys and girls, minors, with sexual assault is because if you go to the press and you say, I believe this man is sexually assaulting me, he can sue you for everything you're worth. And the way the libel law is set up here is different in the United States, is that instead of having to prove who's at fault here, it's completely reversed, so that you, the victim, ends up paying all the legal costs, and you, the victim, invariably end up getting taken down by the establishment. So this is why Jimmy Savile was able to operate for years without any significant challenge, is because of the libel laws that exist here in this country. And I'll tell you something very interesting, Alex Jones, is that America, one thing that the Obama administration did recently is they passed a law that gives Americans an exemption if they're in Britain. If I were to say something that is considered libelous by somebody here in Britain, it would be incumbent upon them to take that case to America. They could not take me to a local jurisdiction for libel prosecution. Oh, here's the expert. Here's the expert.
Joe Lieberman introduced it. And originally, what it was, so Alex Jones, you're here in the UK, you're an American citizen, and you say something that Ed Balls decides to sue you for libel. What would happen is that if it were not libel in the U.S. courts, which it wouldn't be, they will not enforce it. The U.S. courts will not enforce a libel judgment. Now, Joe Lieberman tried to make it that, in fact, there would be an automatic 3 times penalty against the UK citizen or person who sued you in a UK court to do that. So that is a certain exception and something that's good that happened for the U.S. citizens.
It gives you like basically a loophole in the law, in that a lot of times you'll say that guy is a jerk, and they'll say, I'm going to sue you for libel, and say, well, that now the way the law reads under Lieberman is like, if it's not considered libel in the U.S., then they can't sue you here in the U.K. So it's a loophole that you, as an American broadcaster now in the U.K., you can say pretty well anything you would say in America here, and nobody in the U.K. establishment can essentially sue you for libel. You've got a free, open speech here thanks to Joe Lieberman. So that's one thing that got through to Joe Lieberman. Everything else he does, I don't like. But here, it's an open season. It's open season for Alex Jones. They can't come after you for libel thanks to Joe Lieberman and this new law.
Very exciting. Now, let me ask you a question, Max. No, I agree with you. Let me ask you a question. We're going to go to phone calls here, but then I want to come back and ask you, where do you see things going for the global bankers? Like how would they like to see things go versus how you see them going? And let's look. Can you go get Steve, who just ran into Ed Balls? Tell people who Ed Balls is. He's the Keebler Elves' mommy. No, he's the shadow.
They have shadow government.
Yeah, they have shadow government, so he's the shadow chancellor, of the exchequer, which, of course, is always the finance minister. So go get Stephen here. I want to take some phone calls. Thank you for holding. Kathleen in Britannia, Albion or England. You're on the air with Max Kaiser, who's up past his bedtime.
Hi there. Can you hear me? Hi there.
We can barely hear you, but go ahead. Yeah.
You can hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Loud. Okay. I'm an American who's been living in the UK for 28 years. I haven't lost my accent. I keep going back and forth to the States, so I've got a good idea of cultures on both sides. And because I am American, I fit in different places here than if I was British-born, because I don't belong to any particular class. I found this out when I was living in Cambridge. But there's such a class divide. But if you're American, you don't count. So it's easy to fit in both places. My husband was an academic, so I managed to, get involved in that circle in Cambridge.
So great, great.
Well, anyway, the main thing here that I see is the difference between the two societies is that the average person here is dependent on one way or another on the government, either through the NHS, which most people have access to, or benefits like housing benefit. Now, I have two children who both work and are paying taxes, and we still, because of prices, cannot afford a place to live outside of here, and we still
sure. So it's collectivization and control, domestication.
All right, so can I ask? Right. So the question then is: you're just making a comment about how to contrast the two countries, really?
That is part of it, but I just have to get my daughter to stop knocking on the door while I'm talking.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that for a second, because here in the UK and in France and elsewhere in Europe, the government composes up to 50%. Here in the UK, 49% of the GDP is the government. In America, I believe the last I saw, something like 32% of the economy is the government.
It's horrible.
In France, it's almost 60% of the economy is the government.
And now they have 100% tax on people.
Right, and people are getting, that's right, they're getting a tax on 100% of their income. So here you have this.
That's reasonable.
Well, you have this tension between total government and free enterprise, and should the government be involved in picking companies to be started, et cetera, and you have this tension going on. So here in this country, you've got the government, which is up to 50% of the economy, but there are problems, but part of the solution to those problems would be that the government is now allowing for privatization. So things like the NHS and things like education and the transportation system are being tossed to private developers and private contractors. Their solution is to leverage up these institutions with huge amounts of debt. So they say the government shouldn't be involved in these things like the NHS or transportation or education. But what we're going to do as private contractors is we're going to take over these facilities, and we're going to increase the debt load by trillions of pounds.
Because there's still a government, they can use it to rob.
But they still want the government to backstop their debt.
No, it's all a piratical deal.
Take your risk
instead of having a long business name.
See, they get the best of both worlds.
Take your risk or don't.
Gains of running it as an NHS.
Ma'am, what do you think of Turdberg? What do you think of Bilderberg? Absolutely. What do you think of Bilderberg meeting in your country and taxpayers having to pay for it?
Well, I believe that this is what I was saying about the benefit bill. I believe all of that was arranged by meetings such as this one in order to keep people compliant. You said yesterday you noticed that everybody was awake. Yes, they're awake because everybody has suffered under the system, who is like the average person on the street. I think if you talk to the public, you'll know of at least just about everybody has known somebody who's had children taken away by the government, or known somebody who's died at the hands of the NHS when they shouldn't have. There is so much suffering.
Yeah, everybody I know talks about how my wife went in to have a small thing and died. Absolutely, you're right. No, I think that's why they're awake, because they're under the eugenics hammer. God bless you, ma'am. Good to hear from you. I agree with you. Scott in Idaho. You want to talk about Bilderberg? You're on the air with Alex Jones and Max Kaiser.
Both of you.
Hey, buddy.
It was George Washington, I believe, Alex, that said truth will ultimately prevail where there be pains taken to bring it to light. And I think that that's a lot of what we're trying to do. I recently wrote a letter to my local newspaper, an editorial, wherein I wrote a short list of what I think is wrong with America and why I think the Second Amendment is so important. And if you'd be so kind, I'd like to read that short editorial.
Sure, go ahead. Only 20 pages.
No, they limit it to about 360 words or something like that. I wrote that something is terribly wrong with this country of ours. Come on, people, wake up and smell the tyranny. Endless wars, torture, extraordinary rendition, highest incarceration rate in the world, government spying and surveillance, drone attacks on sovereign countries, presidential kill list, phony elections, runaway debt, political corruption, corporatism, judicial corruption, gun running, fast and furious, media manipulation, excessive taxation, propaganda, human experimentation, weather modification, Ponzi schemes, private banks dictating national monetary policies, oppression of government whistleblowers, depleted uranium, FISA wiretapping, immoral leadership, cronyism, nepotism, backroom congressional deals, secrecy, destabilization of countries, militarization of law enforcement, fusion centers, assassinations, trillions of dollars missing, war profiteering, cover-ups, lies, deceit, checkpoints, free speech zones, no speech zones, warrantless searches, Guantanamo, TSA groping and sexual abuse, false flag attacks, foreign aid to countries that violate human rights, the emasculation of the Bill of Rights, and pepper spray, tear gas, sound cannons, directed energy weapons, rubber bullets, tasers, and nightsticks for peaceful American protesters.
Well, what's wrong with all that? That's the freedom. What's wrong with that?
And now they want us to give up our right to defend ourselves.
This sounds exactly like a song from Gil Scott-Heron. Gil Scott-Heron was one of the first rappers going back to the 1970s. It's part of the movement which included the last poets. And during the civil rights period of late 60s, early 70s, when the emergence of black culture in America, you had artists like Gil Scott-Heron who would sing songs using that type of words, that type of phraseology. And at the time, of course, most of America would not consider someone like Gil Scott-Heron an artist, but it turns out that he's a prophet, that Gil Scott-Heron was a prophet of who we are today in America. He's written some brilliant material. You look back about the Reagan years, a track called B-Movie, or another track about winter in America. I mean, these are some of the artists in American history that have been ignored, and that if you want to find out, the prophets of who saw all this coming, you go back and you find out that this is not a shock to a lot of people who have been oppressed before the white guys started getting oppressed. There was a lot more oppression in the ghetto.
Absolutely. Thank you, caller. Great points that you made here. We're going to go to Steve Watson, who just ran into the shadow chancellor of the Exchequer here in just a moment. We're going to end the show here in about 15 minutes. Max Kaiser past his bedtime. We appreciate him joining us at maxkaiser.com. Follow him at Twitter at Max Kaiser. Follow us on The Real Alex Jones. We've also got some reporter pages right now. Our tripod is broken, but we're trying to fix that. Richard is operating as a human tripod right now. Steve Watson is here with us briefly. I want to go to Wes and Will and Corey and Dean at least before we end this transmission. But an example of how thousands of protesters showing up, you never know where they run into the globalist. And that's what's important. And Steve Watson, thank you for joining us. Tell us, is it okay to put your girlfriend on television? Tell us, what a nice lady. She's really fun to hang out with. Tell us all about what just happened.
Okay, we were traveling here from London, from Euston Station, and we arrived at Watford Junction, and we were just getting some cash out of an ATM, and I was just looking around, just, thinking about getting in a cab, coming to this hotel.
How extreme!
And, very extreme, and I saw someone whose face I it clicked in my head, but it didn't immediately register the name. And I thought, is that Ed Balls? So I Googled his image, and
sounds like a character from who's the British comedy guy? He's American, but he does the making fun of James Bond.
Austin Powers.
Austin Powers. Ed Balls, secret agent. Keep going. So
yeah, and he was with a handler of some kind.
Eric Pickles?
Yeah, possibly. But it was definitely him.
Eric Pickles, I presume.
Yeah, it's like 400 pounds.
Was it a 400-pound guy?
No, it wasn't.
Okay,
it was a skinny guy. It wasn't Eric Pickles.
Anyways.
So yeah, the Shadow Chancellor has come to Bilderberg on public transport. And that just means that, and also we saw a couple of others, sharp-looking guys dressed in expensive suits. I've got some video of it, but I don't know if there's anything usable.
No, it is. It's important to show them. Should you go over and talk to them?
Well, I saw Ed Balls. It registered in my mind. I went outside, and I couldn't see him anywhere. And there was a guy hanging around that I thought he was with, and we waited for about 15 minutes, but he'd gone. So then we got in a cab, and we asked the cab driver if he'd taken anyone to the Grove.
Well, obviously, it wasn't that guy, because he would have to come back.
He said,
excellent job, Stevie.
He said he hasn't taken anyone today, but...
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Stevie. Steve Watson of Infowars.com. Thank you, Stevie. All right, let's go back now here to Max Kaiser. So there you go. There's all sorts of opportunities. You know, I'm going to find the paper, but side issue. We're going to break, come back with a few final calls. What else do you want to impart today?
Well, aside from my plug for BitPay?
Yes.
I think that going forward, I'm glad that you now understand what I've been saying about Europe, that you are very well known in Europe, and I hope this is not the last time we see you in Europe, Alex Jones. That's my main thought. I want to have you back often.
I want to come back. Here's a few headlines that are up on Infowars.com right now. London Telegraph, Bilderberg Group, no conspiracy, just the most influential group in the world. Armed checkpoints surround it. Basically, when I told Watson days ago, this is martial law. So the Telegraph scooped us. Continuing here, just some of the news here on the entire Bilderberg front. It is just incredible to see all of this unfolding. So we'll cover the latest on Bilderberg on the other side, take a few final phone calls here, and then we will continue with live streams and more with Max Kaiser and the entire crew. Folks, let's have, because we're in England, hip, hip, hooray! Yeah. Hip, hip, hooray! It's the dog's bollocks, or what do you say? It's the dog's bollocks on them. And piss on Bilderberg. All right. Yeah!
We all know that Berkey water purification.
Folks, Max Kaiser is even more insane in person. Look at Watson over there laughing here. Stevie over there. Me with the gun, you with the belt feeding me, huh? That's a Dr. Strangelove quote, ladies and gentlemen. Let's jam in some calls. A polite beat.
Here's my Alex Jones impression.
Put your headphones on so you can talk to the listeners.
Bill Hicks. I am not Bill Hicks. I've never been Bill Hicks.
He knows the secret.
Okay.
Kaiser, stop it.
I'm not. No, not me. I'm not.
I am Bill Hicks. Come on. Wes in Indiana, you're on the air.
World order. Oh, sorry.
Bleep that. Kaiser is literally... I thought it was all an act. This man is certifiably insane. Wes in Indiana, you're on the air. You got to plug this in to listen to him.
Oh, yes. This technology is always changing, isn't it?
Go ahead. Go ahead. You're on the air, Wes.
Hello, Wes.
Can you hear me, Alex?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're in the romper room right now.
Hello.
First and foremost, I want to thank you for taking my call, and I love the work that you and the crew at Infowars.com are doing, especially the press coverage that you're giving to the Bilderberg conference. It wasn't even until a few months ago that I was turned on to you and your website by a friend of mine at work, and I thought that, people at work called me a conspiracy nut because of what I felt was wrong in this government, and here you are just,
putting all this out there for everyone to see, and it just justifies everything that I've always believed about our government. What I want to ask is, people are protesting, they're creating petitions, they're yelling, they're getting mad about everything that our government is doing, but when is enough enough? I feel that what the people here in America are doing is not effective because these politicians continue to get away with what they're doing. When do we
That's a good question, Max. Okay. That's a good question. How do we, instead of a question, it's a question.
Right.
What do we do to defeat them?
Well, I have my opinion on this, and I think it's a three-pronged attack. Number one, independent media. We got that covered. Number two, you got to hit them in the currency level. That means that local currencies, like here in the UK, there's the Bradford pound, I believe. In Bradford, they have their own currency. So the people, the Bristol pound. So the people in Bristol have created their own local currency, and they trade with each other. So it's all very local.
So media, currency.
And then thirdly, I think that I'm very seriously believe that cryptocurrencies are an important mix of how to defeat the New World Order.
Bitcoin.
I sincerely believe it. I'm appreciate the fact that I can be able to talk about it on this show.
Dollar plunge today. What's going on with that?
But look, the dollar is plunging. Bitcoin price is holding up, and gold and silver have been acting very well. The dollar is a vulnerable currency.
They've been artificially trying to suppress gold and silver.
Well, they, of course, they'd have to be, you can't just manipulate bond prices and stock prices and credit default swaps without also or LIBOR. Implied with all that is manipulating gold and silver. It's all part of the same matrix of markets that are being managed.
But caller, is that basically your point? You're looking for solutions?
Yeah, when do we take this fight to them? What?
Okay, let me ask you this. I want to ask Alex Jones a question based on your question, caller. Okay, Adam Kokesh, who is a warrior, the info warrior, he was calling for an armed march on Washington with guns and stuff. He spent the night in Tour jail. What is your thought, Alex Jones, on what Adam Kokesh has been talking about? I noticed that we're now going to a commercial.
Those damn commercials. All right, no, that's the end of the transmission.
Okay.
No, I'll give you. Oh, we played that just on time because of that.
Oh, perfect. That's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy, Alex Jones.
It is a conspiracy. Fine. Hey, I know you're exhausted, Max. We're going into overdrive now because of his arrogance. We will give him the answer to Adam Kokesh and the groom of the stool. Straight ahead. Max Kaiser is on fire right now.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I got my crew yelling, "Keep it down, Kaiser!"
Underwear bomber.
I think this is the whole point. Like, say, don't be wet, Ocean. No, the transmission continues. David Icke's going to be in the studio with us tomorrow. You were asking about
what?
You were asking about Adam Kokesh.
Yes.
My whole issue is we're winning the info war. I don't want to give the Fed some excuse to stage some event, and that's why I think he saw the light and didn't do that federal march.
Okay.
So, I mean, what's your take on that, Max Kaiser?
Well, I thought it was extremely, if I can use the word ballsy, on the show. I mean, he's really putting himself out there because this idea of sedition and encouraging people for armed insurrection is clearly something the government is going to be anti, and he put himself out there and made that call. So, I guess what my takeaway from it is that he's put that idea in people's head, which is an idea that it's like a taboo. You couldn't really say it in public. He did. He spent his night in jail. But now that idea is out there. People think, you know what? Damn it. This is how this country started. No,
listen, I get all that. But the Redcoats came and started the fight first, trying to take the guns. So you only use violence defensively. And I don't think he was pushing for violence either, but the media tried to portray it that way. My whole issue is 90% of war is info war. So I don't want to get into a physical confrontation because I want to try to fix things intellectually. That's what I'm going for here.
No, I understood. I'm just saying, in his case, Adam Kokesh, who I followed for a number of years as part of the Infowar people that we've been following for years, it seems to me that he took it to another level. That's all. I was just curious what people in the independent media community thought about it. It's quite, quite a thing to do, I think, because he could have gone sent away for 20 years.
Yeah, but I told Piers Morgan, I said, you try to take the guns, it's going to start a civil war.
What about Piers? He reversed himself, by the way.
Yeah, he reversed himself.
That was very interesting, wasn't it, on CNN? He said, in relation to another item that came up after your appearance, he said, I've had people on my show claiming that the U.S. government could attack them. I thought they were crazy, but it was in response to Eric Holder spying through the Verizon on AP and the Associated Press. He flipped on this issue. He's like, you know what, this does sound like tyranny. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So when you put that idea in his head, and being an egomaniac, like many of us are, you couldn't say it in real time that, you're right, there are tyrannical things happening. But 2 or 3 weeks later, after it's in his head for a couple of months and he listens to things and you raise his consciousness, he's like, you know what, this does sound tyrannical.
Yeah. Why can government have guns, but we can't? Why am I penalized because I'm an individual and not wearing a monkey outfit?
Well, the gun issue, as you know, I have mixed feelings on it because I think that if there's going to be gun ownership, then there should be a connection to identifying clear tyrannical threats and then acting on those threats. It seems to me that by not more, acting more in a direct way, the government is now doing things like I said that they would do. They are actively removing bullets from the marketplace by buying all these bullets.
Yeah, no, you said that years ago. Probably gave them the idea. You're probably doing it.
You are not buying into that idea, but you don't have to.
No, but the issue is if we don't have a culture of guns, we're slaves. If men don't know how to use weapons and specialists know how to use them, the people that know how to use them are the kings, and those that don't know how to use them are the slaves. It's like that with any animal. And I don't say we're an animal, but I mean, we're the super animal.
But the headlines you just read on Drudge Report, where the Verizon is doing a deal, they're reading your mail, they're collecting data. Eric Holder's been compromised, he's been corrupted. Obama's compromised, he's corrupted. There's no. My point is that people say, well, if tyranny ever happens, we're going to take our guns and we're going to take our government back. But tyranny, we've had tyranny now. We've had example after example of example.
No, I hear you. So you're like the Second Amendment's for this. You haven't used it, right. So why do you have it?
That's right.
But it doesn't mean we lose it just because discretion is the greater part of valor. Hey, folks, live coverage tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central, Infowars.com/Bilderberg. Great job to the entire crew. Great job to Max Kaiser and crew. More coming up at Real Alex Jones on Twitter. Follow us there.
Introducing